Welcome to, you probably thought that this was going to be another, where after the AEW collision, we sift through the wreckage, but instead we've got an HMG extra for you because just because AEW takes a week off doesn't mean that I do. So I have called in a couple of ringers here, to help me provide a little bit of extra content to end your weekend. And I have with me a couple of OVW brothers that you may or may not know, you better know. And they have been tag team partners of mine. They have been tag team opponents of mine. And they've been friends of mine, most importantly, throughout all this time, whether we've drifted apart or not. But ladies and gentlemen, I am bringing to you, we have Kharn Alexander joining us here. And of course, we have one half of the longest reigning, to this day, NXT Tag Team Champions of all time. Vik the Space Lord is joining us. And boys, welcome to the HMG Extra, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's been a while since me and Kharn have seen each other. That's for sure.
That's right. So how this came about, besides the fact that AEW took a week off getting preempted for basketball, was that, Kharn reached out to me and he said, "Hey, what's going on? Long time." I said, "Hey, what's up?" He had taken a social media hiatus, so I respected that and I didn't bother him. And he just let me know that he's got some irons in the fire coming up, and he was interested in coming on and talking about some of those. He wanted to bring on our buddy Vik here too, and I said, "Well, that's what a coincidence." I was also thinking about doing something with Vik again because it's been about a year since he came on, so I was like, "That's what we're about due." So, yeah, we're calling it in the ring, kind of guys. But Kharn, so like I said, you got some stuff that you got coming up, but we'll get to that. Maybe we should start by talking about the past. Maybe we can go with a past, present, future type of gimmick here. So, we'll go on we'll go on down memory lane, and but I'll start with you. Talk about, like, I guess we'll start by you coming through those doors of the Davis Arena, and what are your memories of that, and then tie that into me and Vik, because we want to hear more about ourselves as well.
Well, yeah, of course. So, man, I was just thinking about this actually the other day because I was thinking, we're probably going to talk about some past times here on the show. So I was really thinking about, how it came to be, and I was just talking to someone about it, how it came to be that I started in pro wrestling. And it's funny because when I started right out of high school, like, I don't know if you guys remember, I was like 19 when I got to OVW.
What? I thought you were 35.
No. That's more closer to now. We won't say exactly what my age is now, but you're closer to the present time. We'll get there though. But I remember after graduating high school, all my friends were going to college and stuff, and I'm like, man, I don't want to be in school right now and anymore. Like, this is not, because I knew if I would go to school right now, I'm probably just gonna drop out. That's just a waste of time.
Yeah, so
I just everyone else that I knew that wasn't going to school was going to the army, and I'm like, man, maybe I should do that. Maybe I should go to the army. Like, my stepdad was in the army, my grandpa was in the army. And it's, this isn't a secret, but a lot of people know I was in a wrestling magazine about this, but I had epilepsy as a kid. And I still, to this day, take medication for it. Don't have the disorder, but obviously at the time I still also took the medication for it. And I remember the recruiter calling me and being like, "Hey, where you just graduated high school, as they do, trying to recruit people." And I'm like, "Yeah, man, yeah, I've really been thinking about it." You could tell that I was the first yes he got this day. He's like, "All right, cool. I just need to go through a couple simple questions." He's like, "You got any pre-existing conditions?" I'm like, "Well, I had epilepsy. I took medication for." Most awkward silence in my life.
Click.
This dude, I thought he was more upset than I was about this. He's like, "Oh, that's a disqualification." I'm like, "Well, are you sure? I could, I don't know, do something behind a computer for the army or something." He's like, "No, man, they're super strict. Sorry," and basically just hung up. I'm like, okay. I'm like, well, what do I? So that's kind of where I started to really think about wrestling. So I was like, all right, what do I enjoy doing? And I was in wrestling in high school, but I felt like my career kind of as a high school wrestler, collegiate wrestler, wasn't going to take off because I wasn't super great, but I was decent. But my senior year during sectionals, the last chance to prove myself, I got mono. So I had no ending to my wrestling career as far as high school went. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna look into professional wrestling schools. And
It's basically the same thing, right?
yeah, right. I was funny side note is I still thought it was real before I got in the ring at OVW. That was a fun time.
See, guys, I told you some of the marks still believe this shit. Anyway,
Right.
well, you know, that was a while ago, but I remember my only criteria for going to OVW was it was the closest school. Literally no research, had no idea it was linked to WWE, just was like, I want to wrestle. This is the closest place I can drive to. I'm gonna do it as soon as possible. And that's kind of like where I started. I remember my mom, since I was right out of high school, she's like, I want to make sure this is an okay place, so I'm going to go with you. And so we just stroll out into Al Snow's class, advanced class, with me and my mom, like, hey, I want to be a wrestler. And Al, like, I remember tap Seth Skyfire on the shoulder and be like, hey, will you go deal with this, please? Seth just runs over like, hey, who are you? I'm like, oh, I want to be a wrestler. He's like, oh, come back on Monday. I'm like, oh, all right. Well, I drove 3 hours. He's like, well, yeah, we can't do nothing right now. I'm like, all right, I'll be back Monday. So then I came back, got it all figured out, and kind of, as far as OVW goes, the rest is kind of history, and that's how it started out for me.
Had you never watched OVW on TV there?
I had never watched I had never watched anything but WWE in my life at that point, and WCW. But I mean, at that time, they were the same thing by then.
So Vic, were you already there when Cody Kharn came?
No, I think he was there when I was there.
Okay, so you came after Kharn.
Yeah,
yeah.
I don't think it was too long.
Too long. It was like maybe.
Well, that's why I can't remember. It's very hazy. It's very hazy.
It was enough time for me to have gotten through. It was at the time Tank Tolan's beginner's class, so it was at least a couple months I was there, and I remember being in rips for not even a couple weeks, and then Vic showed up.
Oh, okay. Because yeah, even Tank, I don't think he did the beginner's class for too much longer after I got there.
I had forgotten he had ever done it.
Yeah, well, because he was there for just that little bit, and then I remember like he kind of went to Ring of Honor for a little while at the end of that, and then
I definitely remember him practicing Ring of Honor moves in beginner's class on people. So yeah, that checks out.
Yeah, that's what beginner's classes are for. So I need more kids to bump around.
Damn right. So you guys missed the Blonde Bombers era then?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was, dude. There was, when I got to OVW in 2005 for the first time, they had the sickest tag team division. I mean, it was Tank and Chad Wicks. Yeah. They were like, you know, they're two extremely short jack guys. Perfect, yeah. Right? They were the Blonde Bombers. They had the Heart Throbs, Heartbreakers, whichever you knew them as. Yeah, well, they had one name in WWE and one name in OVW, and I always forget which was which.
Like I just remember Heartbreakers.
They were super over. You had the Thrill Seekers, which was Johnny Jeter and Matt Capitelli, and then you had Eminem. You know, Mercury, Nitro, and Melina. Or Matthews. It was Matthews still at OVW. So there was your just for little old OVW. There's your 4-team division. Those were some, dude. You would not believe how over the Heartbreakers were. And that was where we were still trying to like before the Wednesday TV taping, we would have to come in and set up like 250 extra chairs just for all the people that were coming to these shows. Then, you know, fast forward to when you guys were there and Hamin was there and we had to sit in the audience to fill seats. You know what I mean? Like that just shows you the difference.
Yeah, see, I was there after Hamin was there too.
Same, yeah, I didn't.
He was gone.
Oh, you miss Hamin entirely? Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, completely. Which at the time I was like, oh, that really sucks. And then as I got to know him later, I'm like, I'm not too upset about it. Although, I mean, granted, he's still the greatest spot in TV history ever. To me, is still when Dean Hill told Jeter to fuck off on TV. That was still the greatest moment in all wrestling history, as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen anything that has come across that legitimately real. And I know, like, Paul Heyman was the one that was behind it, so that's what I give him credit for.
Well, as lovable and cuddly as Hamin is these days, back then it was a little bit of a chore. You know, the post show meetings were like hours long, and everybody was just so tired and wanted to go home. And you know, so not the greatest opinion of Paul Heyman. But anyways, so all right, so Vic, you get to OVW now. On the one hand, you have Kharn, who's fucking Mark, thinks this shit's real. You, on the other hand, already wrestler.
Yeah.
You've already done stuff. You've been places. You're trained, and you come in, and this is like, I will say it for you. You won't say it, but a little beneath you where you were, like the kind of stuff that you were doing with us, a little beneath you, your skill set. But anyway, yeah, that's how I'm going to tee up where you talk about your sort of like first experiences walking through those Davis Arena doors.
I mean, I don't think it wasn't beneath me by any means. I still learn in pro wrestling today. Like, you're never not going to learn something in any situation. The hardest part was kind of like figuring out where everybody else was at, like when you were putting together matches and stuff. I mean, because especially there, like there wasn't a lot, like, you know, when we do the drills with Rip and you would go through like just your chaining drills type thing, working body parts and doing the heat and the holds and stuff like that, you could see really quickly who had a clue or who had done a little bit and who was just there playing wrestling because they, you know, wanted to be a pro wrestler, but didn't really have the concept down of what pro wrestling's supposed to look like. But then we had a lot of guys that, like, maybe they didn't look like they'd be pro wrestlers, but they had the concept. Like, there was definitely some guys that I would say advanced really quickly in certain areas. Like, and there was, you know, even just with guys like Tubby Tommy or Fang or Sonic, whatever you want to call those guys, they didn't look like they would be pro wrestlers, but they all worked really well, and they were ahead of a lot of other guys. But I mean, so that was kind of surprising, but most of the time I didn't get to work with guys like that, as you know. In the matches we were in, there was like one person usually leading, you know, 8 other people that had no fucking clue. Which is always a struggle. I mean, before I got there, like I worked a lot of guys that were inexperienced or whatever, but they would follow along. And it's not as hard when you're in just singles matches with people. But there, I know within that DCW environment we were in at Rip's class at the time, there was so many guys that didn't have a clue. So you were trying to do a very basic ABC in a match, and you know, 90% of them weren't really past A at that point to even put A with B and C. And so,
we were on TV. That's the crazy part.
Right. I mean, what was it like the local access though? Because it wasn't on the same.
No, it was the network. Yes, it was. It was the same. Yep. We came on after OVW, and our show was 2 weeks out. Like the show that we taped 1 week wouldn't air until the following Saturday night. So we would be on after OVW aired. So that was kind of a death spot because you're talking about 11 o'clock on a Saturday night.
Yeah.
But it was definitely on the CW. Yep.
Wow. That's funny. That's so funny. Yeah, because I can remember like watching certain things, and like when I was working between the two shows, like kind of finally, Al had me as Eric Doom on OVW, and you know I was Apocalypse on DCW, and I couldn't remember. There was one night I was on like the last match of one of the shows and on the first match of the other ones, and the two names were different, and I'm like, but I'm still the same person, and it was just ridiculous. You know what I mean? I was like, how does this make any sense?
Who came up with Eric Doom?
Al Snow.
It was all Al?
Yeah, it was all Al. 100%. He's just, yeah, he didn't like Apocalypse. I remember we were in where was it? That gym, like St. Therese? Is that which place it was? It was the gym where like the locker rooms, one was like underneath, and then the other one was like over above the gym looking down. But yeah, there was one day before a show, and Al's just standing there looking at me, kind of doing his humming and hawing deal. And I'm going to call you Eric Doom. All right, whatever, dude.
Right. It wasn't his preferred. Apocalypse wasn't his preferred Marvel villain. He went away from X-Men and went over to the Fantastic Four side.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Al's more of a DC guy, I believe. Shortly afterwards, so that made sense because DC always has terrible names for their comic characters.
Yeah.
So. But yeah, I'd actually forgotten about that until, I don't know, maybe a couple of years ago. I was doing an interview with somebody and they brought it up and I was like, holy shit, I forgot that I was called that for like a month or something there.
I was perusing your Wikipedia page and I thought, man, if this thing falls apart, I can just go to that and we can make an entire show out of that because I got some questions about that. But anyway, yeah, that's where I saw it today. I was just like, Eric Doom, I missed that one.
Wasn't one of them also Zach Black? There's one show that you came out.
I don't know. I don't think
Zach Black. And I'm
possible. Like, that sounds like a name I would have.
I remember being like, so are we doing a parody of Jack Black and APOC's going over to comedy now? Like what? I think it was just one time. I think it was right before Eric Doom. You guys tried that, and then it was like, or it was right in the middle of it, and then you went back to Eric Doom. But I remember being in the back and hearing Zach Black. I'm like, who the fuck is Zach?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh.
I know I tried to probably use Zach. Like when people would like ask me certain names, like even when I got to FCW, that I had to have a list of like 10 names, and Zach was usually something that was always in it. I think when I was a kid, I had a fake ID. Like, it wasn't really a fake ID. I found somebody's like birth certificate, and their name, I feel like it was Zach Wild, but that's not right. It was or it might have been, but it was spelled differently than the actual guitar player. And yeah, I used to use that to buy tobacco products when I was up in Canada. I'd be like, oh, I lost my ID, but here's my birth certificate or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, this is what I carry around. I don't have my ID though.
Yeah. I mean, back then you could get away with it sometimes,
Well, everybody's very nice in Canada, right? So I'm sure they would understand that you're in a pickle.
Some places some places wanted to sell minors cigarettes and stuff, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Money's money.
Yep.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. So Kharn, you're in the middle of this. You're finding out that wrestling is not in fact real. It's a work. And you're finding out what even that phrase means, right?
Yeah.
So obviously I'm there to help you. So just sort of talk about that sort of awakening and transition of like, hey, wait a minute. When are we going to use the chairs?
Yeah. So I remember my first class in the beginner's class. They were like, hey, just watch, this is your first day. And I'm watching this stuff and I'm like, oh shit, this stuff isn't what I thought it was. Like, and I'm like getting a little nervous and I'm like, okay, well, you know what? I'll just start from ground zero. I'll just whatever. And out of nowhere, Tank just says, hey, Cody, because I went by Cody then. It's like, come into the ring. And I'm like, oh, okay. I come in the ring, and he puts and the only other person in the ring with me is Lupe Viscara.
Ooh, the 19-year-old phenom?
Yeah.
19 forever.
And he's like, all right, guys, I'm gonna give you an example here. Cody's gonna give me an example of like real reactions and real wrestling. And I'm like, oh, okay, I can do this. So we had this drill where he's like, just, give him like a waist lock, like a real wrestler would, like, how to do, and don't let him go. Like, don't let him do it. And Lupe, for the life of him, could not get out of the waist lock or the locks that I put him in. And that was my first experience with it. And I'm like, okay, so I kind of got eased into like, okay, there is some relevance to real wrestling carrying over here. I mean, they're both wrestling, but I can kind of delve back into that for inspiration. So I got through the beginner's classes. I mean, like, it's just a lot of bumps and, running ropes. And in the middle of it, we started doing a lot of cardio for some reason. Like, we had to do like 200 squats, 50 sit-ups, and like 50 push-ups every day before we were allowed to get in the ring, because I guess someone higher up was like, hey, some of your beginners kids are out of shape. Make sure that's fixed. And I mean, it was easy for me to do because I was, in 3 sports in high school and just got out of high school. But then I don't remember his name, but one guy the first day that he had to was asked to do squats, he just walked out and never came back. And I was like, okay. But fast forward to Rip's class, I remember when APOC came in, and I was like, okay, this guy has a similar kind of character to me and stuff. And I was like thinking about it, and I mean, it took me a few weeks to get up the courage to ask this. But I remember we were at tapings, and I just sit down by APOC, and I'm like, hey, would you want to do like kind of a apprentice master gimmick with me? And he's like, yeah, I'd be into that. That'd be cool. Like, I was so nervous asking him because I thought he was going to be like, fuck no. Because like you said, he's this guy who, came in and had all this experience and stuff. And I'm like, still like, I don't know, less than a year ago, thought it was still real. And, then that kind of took off. And I was thinking about this the other day too. I'm like, we never had like an actual tag team name. It was always Apocalypse and Cody Carnage, or when I changed my name, Apocalypse and Kharn Alexander. We never got to the point where we did like a lot of weird stuff in our gimmick. Like we put Fang in a bag, and then Richard Cranium was a part of the gimmick for a minute, where he kind of like stole me with friendship. And I remember doing some sort of promo with like coloring books. I think that was a Pops thing that he came up with.
Yeah.
And we did a lot of fun stuff, but it was super gimmicky. Which, because at the time I was really green. I was a beginner, so I couldn't really do the whole really big matches with technical, like anything like really storytelling. I had that, and that's why I was put with APOC to kind of help gradually get me more seasoned in that kind of like part of the business. But then at a certain time, it was almost like, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, APOC, but our gimmick kind of, our team kind of just got cut off when you kind of got taken over to OVW. I remember, and I was talking to Josh Ashcraft about it the other day, and he's like, no, there was like a showcase where you beat him with a backslide, and then nothing was ever seen again from it.
Weird. I don't even remember that one. I'm trying to remember too, because I know, man, I can remember the Fang in the bag and the reveal when we had Dark Fang, and he spit the mist in Cranium's face.
Yeah.
I thought I did something with Cranium right after that, and I think he got hurt. I remember, I think I hit him with a belt, and he got hurt. I can't remember if he got concussed or something else happened to him or what it was, and I don't know if he ever got back in the ring again.
Well, I think it was kind of difficult during that time to do any kind of long-term storyline, because that was when WWE kind of pulled out of OVW.
Yeah, it was because that was near our end of DCW.
Yeah, people were leaving because of that, and then some people stuck around and then was feeling it out, but then would be like, yeah, I'm going to go do my own thing somewhere else. So people were coming and going constantly during that time.
Yeah.
Or the people that came in were like, okay, this wasn't what I thought, because I expected it more, something else when WWE was here. So it was hard to keep a storyline going, because we'd start something, and then out of nowhere, they'd be like, well, we're not going to be here anymore, so figure it out. I don't remember his name. He went by his like nickname was the best body in the business, Jason Static. Yeah. I remember as soon as WWE pulled out, he left, and we were in a gimmick with him, kind of storyline where
That's right. You were doing. That's why I always remembered his roses thing. Because didn't he just stand up in the meeting when they were like, "Hey, if anybody wants to leave because WWE's not here anymore,"
yeah,
like and he just stood right up and he's like, "Cool, thanks, I'm out." He just got up and left.
And the next day, because we had already announced the match on like the website or whatever, so we had to cut a promo, and it was like, "Hey, Kharn," I was like, I think it was I already took care of him in the parking lot or something. Like I ripped up the roses because my character didn't talk. I just like growled and said a word here and there. And APOC's like, "All right, are you ready for your match tonight?" And I just hold up some roses and like rip them apart just to show that it was already taken care of. He's like, "All right, so we need a new opponent," and that was the solution to that one. But that was like that happened constantly with our opponents and stuff during that time. And I'm sure it happened with just more people than just us, because I mean, like I said, people were coming and going. But I mean, I will say, like, through that time, even though it was kind of like chaos, I did learn a lot through being partnered with APOC and just in class in general. And I remember Pops was helpful with like character work, and another one that comes to mind was Ali. Ali Akbar was super like very much like, hey, didn't really officially take me under his wing, but was always like trying to like give me advice and help me out. Um, so in my opinion, that was a good time to be there because there was a lot of great people that were really knowledgeable. So for somebody like me that was really new, it was kind of like just this wealth of information that everyone was like willing to help each other out because of the circumstances. And it was kind of a great time, in my opinion, to just be at OVW and get to like just absorb all that.
Oh,
So
definitely.
that's kind of like the next step in my process of pro wrestling went.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, at that point in time when we were all there, that's one of the only times I've ever seen that many people kind of come together in a close knit group, always working to really like be better all around. And it wasn't just like one person kind of like centering on them to be better. It was everybody trying to make everybody better, trying to make the show better. Um, things were, obviously rough for a little while when WWE pulled out because even like as awesome as Louisville is for wrestling fans, a lot of them fucked off at that point in time, and they stopped coming to Wednesdays for a little bit, and a bunch of our other shows as well. And there was a bunch of us that were really just trying to step it up in every way possible, like all across the board, to keep people coming in, and obviously it kind of
Yeah,
worked.
it's like their favorite wrestler left and they left. It's like, well, if my people that I liked aren't going to be here, why should I come back? And it was,
Yeah, which seemed crazy to me because like Danny had been there for years before without WWE. I don't see why, you know what I mean? That was what the people kind of based their quality of show upon at the time because like obviously OVW had been a long running show, a long running territory without WWE for a long time before. And
Mhm.
I'm glad to see that they're still going. Like, it just, I think it speaks volumes about what everybody has done in those doors, especially now that Danny's long gone and everything. And there's enough there that it's kept going all these years. And I mean, I'm pretty proud of the fact that we were all part of it to keep those doors open to see it still thriving nowadays.
Yeah. There was a big sort of resurgence in the, I guess, the awareness of OVW after guys like Cena, Batista, all those guys that you always would hear about came from there. When they made it to TV, the words OVW were thrown around a lot. And that's certainly how it came across my table. I'm sure you heard about that, Vic, and stuff. So, and now it's like even more awareness with this past year with the wrestlers on Netflix and everything is like
Right.
really shining a spotlight on it. So it's good. Um, for perspective, I believe I pulled out before the WWE. So a lot of that stuff
That's what I
that
was
you were
trying to
just
remember.
talking about, with Fang in a bag and whatnot, like I don't think I was there in physically for that. I was trying to follow along with what you guys were doing,
Hmm.
but I wasn't like a part of that because I'm sure I would have roasted you for it if I was in the building. But
Well,
but
I
nonetheless,
think your former partner,
yes, this
Zeus
was
Adonis,
this
had
yes, this was the
he was in
grape
the
drink
grape drink
connection.
correct connection by then, yes, which was
Yeah,
awesome.
rough Rider Rashawn, yes,
Love me some
and I believe they had a little thing with Sergio too. Sergio is in the chat, and Sergio says,
right.
uh, he says, a quote from Al Barone: "Wrestling is real, life is fake." Uh,
Hollow rib,
it's,
bro.
it's
Hollow
bro,
rib.
a
Still one of
rib.
my favorite people to this
Oh
day.
yeah.
Off speed.
We'll get to him. We'll get to him next. The other thing that Serge commented earlier was, I remember Karn's favorite wrestlers were the odd combination of Kane and Chris Masters. So yeah,
I got
definitely.
to wrestle Chris Masters finally.
That's right.
I got one thing knocked off my bucket list when I was wrestling. At least that was
Yep.
he
That
was
was
he was
he
I
was
actually
he was definitely Chris Masters in that match, and
I
you
got to
were
do the master
definitely,
lock to him, and after that, I continued to use the master lock as my submission finisher for a good while.
yeah.
'Cause I asked him, like, "Can I do the master lock too?" He's like, "Absolutely." It's like, "I'm gonna break it," and I'm like, "Well, yeah." Like, obviously, but then I just
Yeah,
kept
I
using
can't wait to break out of it, kid. It's very like it's a very Scott Hall, like, what's your finish? Can't wait to kick out of it.
Yeah.
So Vic, this we're gonna very small tangent here.
Hmm.
Lupe Vizcarra, right? Got signed. Then disappeared in FCW. No one knows ever what happened to him after that, except you might. You're the only person left who could know.
I don't know what happened to him afterwards, but I know what
during.
Yeah, I believe the story that I got. So of course I wasn't there firsthand for this, but I've heard this story told because he was kind of a legend at after we had left, and then even being there. Because I think one day I heard Dream bring him up about being, because he was still saying oh, I'm 19 when he was in FCW. Well, we don't. How long was he in OVW for? And always being 19, right?
At least a year, 2 years.
Right. And so I guess somebody took him to the dentist, or it was something like that, and somebody saw his actual birth date on something, and it turned out he was 28 or 29, so maybe something like that, possibly early 30s. I believe it was actually even better. What I'd heard was Bradley J, or Jay Bradley, was the one who had found this out, of course. So then he stooged him off, I think, to the office, and I think he was just fired, released shortly after that actually came out, because I don't know if he had been lying to the office about his age or something, because they all seemed to be completely clueless that he wasn't 19 or whatever it was. But yeah, it was all because of some medical sheets, and somebody saw he wrote his actual birth date down on something, and he was definitely not 19 years old. But I think he just never really, I don't think he learned English any better, which they were pretty dickheads.
He was a native English speaker.
Yeah, I mean, I saw, I won't throw whoever it is under the bus because I really love them, but they happened to shit on one of the Japanese guys while I was there, and their words were well, if you don't learn to speak English, you'll be speaking Japanese back in Japan, was actually a line I heard someone say to a signee, you know what I mean, after they cut a promo, and I was like, wow, what the fuck. That was also a pretty epic day of seeing some unreal shit all in that conversation. So, but I really like who said the conversation, so I won't bury their racist tendencies.
Fair enough. Yeah, so I remember trying to follow up with you guys the best I could. It was nobody was too interested in covering FCW, so it was kind of hard. The best I could usually do was house show report, oh, these guys had these matches and that was it, Yeah. And I remember constantly, looking at that and trying to see what was up. I don't remember where I got it from, but I remember get some dirt sheet thing about the one thing about Lupe that I ever heard was that people were struggling with him in the ring, he wasn't getting it, and as a guy that has wrestled Lupe on television in a real match, I would always just pretend I was wrestling myself, shadow boxing or something. I just tell him what to do and he did it. So it wasn't, it wasn't that hard for me to get something basic out of him, but how things were. The culture at that time was a lot of, I always describe it as, and feel free to disagree if this wasn't your experience, but when we were all trying to break in that 06, 07, 08, in that time, it was one of the worst periods for wrestling, because I thought you had the least amount of actual talent, but you also had all the backstabbing, bitterness, and just that kind of a thing. It seemed they would be more concerned with making you look bad to make themselves look better than to just try to make yourself look good. In my example, it's people would think that Lupe was a good wrestler if I had a match with him, not just to put myself over, but I'm just using that as an example because I know. And then if other guys down there couldn't do what even I could do, then is that more an indictment of them, or is it more an indictment of Lupe or whatever? So I feel a lot of that was really going on there. Instead of worrying about trying to do what's best and shining that way, they would make sure to make everybody else look as bad as possible so that they move up by default, Would you agree that you saw, a lot of that going on around that era?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was so that they'd move up by default, but I mean, there was definitely a lot of like kind of bullshit in that aspect because like, but I don't know, it was kind of dumb to me because really you're exposing how fake something is. You know what I mean? With the way that the people would do certain things, like when you're just trying to like show that somebody can't do, like they don't get it, they don't understand it, they don't know. I mean, it doesn't make you any better by exposing them in the ring. Like we're supposed to be
Right.
kind
Well,
of
also,
hiding
do
that.
do you think Terry Taylor doesn't know what you're doing, or something? You know what I mean? Like
Well,
somebody like that
so
is not going to be able to see through your little
right,
juvenile.
but so certain guys like that. I mean, not. I couldn't say Terry. That I had an interaction with him enjoying that kind of thing because Terry takes a lot of shit pretty seriously when it comes to wrestling.
Mhm.
But there's definitely other guys that love to see that kind of shit. So
Mm.
it's maybe not to get yourself moved up, but you're trying to get over with somebody. And so
Well,
that's why you kind of
and by
exploit.
extension,
Right. You know, the little bit of politics of like maybe the promoter or whoever's booking says like this guy's the shits. Go out there and really show the people how shitty he is so we don't have to fucking deal with him anymore. Type of thing. And then they get a good laugh about it afterwards. But I mean most of those people they still kept their jobs. Like there's definitely a good point when I was in FCW where I got there and I looked around and I was like, man, there's like I don't know, like, so say I mean, there was maybe 60 people signed when I first got there, and there was 10 people I could look at when I first got there that I was like, "How the fuck did these people get here?" Like, just knowing all the people that I'd known, seeing all the places, just like the world of wrestling in general and being like, you hired these 10 people out of everybody else out there. Like, why? And I used to be kinda clueless about it, and it started to bother me for a while because 'cause I'm like, "Man, these people, like, make the day fucking go longer." Sometimes you might get some funny shit out of them, but it's not, like, funny in a good way type of thing. And then somebody had said to me, "Bro, they're here so that we stay here," more or less. Because when it comes time that they've gotta start cutting people, these are the people that they cut. They don't cut the rest of us. They cut these guys. Makes it easy. And I was like, "Well, okay. I guess that kinda makes me feel better, but not when, we have to spend time of the day, like, trying to teach these people things, trying to work with them on things, trying to make ourselves better with these things." Like, that's not, I mean, conducive to me to be a healthy work environment. And then a lot of those people too, they would just get shit on the whole time they were there, like, and then they'd be kinda become a joke a little bit. And, I mean, most of those people I never heard or saw from them again type of thing. And even when I was in FCW at first, I was like, "Man, everybody we worked with in OVW, for the most part, especially the people that stayed after WWE pulled out, all deserved to be there." And, none of them were. Like, 1, 2 other people from OVW at the time were there who had been signed from the same thing that I did, and, one of them didn't last, which I was kinda surprised at. That was Garrison. Is that his
mm.
last Garrison Creed,
Well,
tall
it was
kid?
Gavin Garrison is what
Kevin Garrison.
his working name was.
Right,
Jason was
that's
his
it.
real name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, I was surprised because I feel like I can't remember if he got released or if he quit. I just remember, like, there was a bunch of people that quit within my first, like, 6 months there, and I was like, "Holy fuck," like, "This is insane," type of thing. But it's the way the business goes. Like, even now, like, I have students that kinda come to me with some of the same kinda issues about things, like the way people are in the locker rooms, and I
Mhm.
mean, my experience in locker rooms for the last while has I thought it had been a lot better. I think there's certain places that, like, people get their egos, but they're never gonna go anywhere else, so they like to hold their egos very closely to their hearts and, what they think is really important, but that in turn just kind of fucks your talent up in the long run because you'll take advantage of kids that, I don't know, maybe aren't as hard or don't have as thick skin, you know? And
Yeah.
that's the thing, like, wrestling, you need a tough skin. Whenever my students have asked, "What's the one most important thing in wrestling that you need?" And I'm like, "Thick skin," because you're never gonna get approval, you're gonna get fucked with, and it's gonna be in ways that, like, you never know. Like even now, I get told things that like I'm like, what? Like that doesn't even make sense. I don't even understand how that flies in this day and age. Certain things,
Right.
and it's
Right.
just like always mental games for somebody to try to make themselves feel better at the end of the day and make somebody else feel worse. So,
That's yes, that's true. I'm not going to this is a great segue, but we're not going to segue into anything major. I just want to ask one question. I'm going to ask it to both of you. But we don't have to get into it. It's a simple yes or no answer relating to, all the stuff that we've heard recently about, let's just say, some inappropriate behaviors and cultures and stuff that's been going around, right? Like we've all heard about it. We don't have to discuss it. It's a simple yes or no answer. Either one of you, are you the least bit surprised? Yes or no? Kharn?
I no. I learned pretty quickly, even though in wrestling, I'm not surprised by anything at this point.
Yeah, Vic?
kind of, yeah, actually, which is the funny part about it. Like I would say no, but when I read some of the things, yes, mainly because of the time frame, um, especially with how much I'd seen the company grow in a corporate
Mm,
fashion while I was there, watching things change, especially like all based corporately. Like every change that occurred within that company was corporately while I was there, and it was
mhm.
all to kind of stop things like that from happening. Because as we know, wrestling and entertainment in general, for a long time, had been the Wild West, where people took advantage and they do shit like that. Um, so like when I first saw like the initial allegations or whatever of whatever when he had to retire when
Mhm.
Vince had to retire the
The
couple of
tweet.
years ago.
Well,
Yeah,
time to retire.
right. So like that one wasn't surprising because that was from something in the past, and that to me like obviously like there's tons of dirty history within pro wrestling, top to bottom. But for something to come out that happened within like the last 5 years, that's pretty shocking to me. And I mean I don't know what obviously all of this is still kind of
Yeah,
going, but
yeah.
when I saw the text messages or whatever that were supposedly sent, I was like, man, that's not the dude that like I ever dealt with, obviously.
Right.
And it seemed much more insane to me considering I was forced to take classes or whatever you want to call them about things not to do. Those text messages are number one on the list because I will tell you this, all WWE talent is told from pretty much day one when you get there. If you take dumb pictures and you send texts on anything, it's kept forever. It will never go away. And it's going to be public access if anything ever comes out of it.
Mhm.
So to see that stuff happen within the last couple of years super surprises me, especially supposedly being from Vince. I
Well,
mean,
the rules don't apply to him, right? Obviously.
I
So
I guess like I
that's for
mean,
guys
if
like
you're
you. You got to take the classes.
right, I mean,
Who do you think you are trying to get over and, make the
yeah,
company money? Like, what? Go
yeah, I
take a
know, right?
class.
Yeah, like it's just it blows. So that kind of blows me away. I was surprised by that. Um,
Hmm. Well,
the insanity of it all doesn't surprise me. I'm just
right.
surprised that
I
it
see.
happened recently to have something like that happen.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's go back to more fun stuff. So Karn, both of you guys you said this, like, you sort of gravitated towards Vic because you had a similar sort of
That was when
feel.
I was wearing a cape.
Yeah, he's a cape with a hood. Don't forget there was a hood
My
on
mom
that
made me
cape.
that. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
beautiful.
don't make it seem like it was just Superman's cape. This was a cloak, I believe is
It
the
was. It
word
was a
would be
very
more
nice
accurate.
crushed velvet cloak, actually.
Dude, that's so sweet, man. Yeah. Do you still got it?
I'm sure it's got to be in my mom's basement. I don't think it's with my other wrestling stuff here because I think
Uh,
I don't. Yeah, I haven't dug through it all lately. I've got a few things in my closet back
hey,
there.
your cloak lives in your mom's basement.
Yeah, it
Um,
just might. There's a bunch
Yeah.
of
So
names out
so
there.
so yeah. You guys had a similar vibe, right? But again, you're just a kid coming from school, so like, you know, and you probably tried a few things, you tweaked it over the years up until, let's just say, today. You probably have an idea more so who you are today than you ever have, and what you may or may not do. Um, but like, how did you like? What was your process? Because I think we all had to, at wrestler, as anybody who was wrestling, we had to at some point sit down and be like, okay, well, what can I do? Because everybody's doing everything. So like, what am I gonna do? Right. So like, how did you sort of land on, um, you know, where you like, how did you? What's the evolution to where you ended up? Like, I guess is how I'm trying to say it.
Well, it's interesting because I pretty much at OVW just did whatever I was told. I remember, I think it
Mm-hmm.
was Roadkill that told APOC, "Hey, he needs a leash," and
Yeah.
I was like, "All right." So I'm like, and I was trying to, impress people at the time because for some reason, when I was a kid, I didn't understand the concept of shut the fuck up and listen. I always
Mm-hmm.
had questions because I wanted to learn. And even though it came from like a place of like innocence, kind of, I want to be a better wrestler. So I want to ask these questions. It got me heat, basically.
Of course.
Um,
Well, everything that you ever did gets you heat.
yeah.
That's the first lesson I learned too. Is everything you do is wrong.
And
Um,
I didn't learn that lesson. So I just kept doing more of the
yeah.
wrong stuff and thinking, okay, this time it'll work. But setting that aside, because of that, I was like, all right, I'm going to do everything I'm asked to, but even bigger. So instead of getting a leash, I got this massive ass chain that was probably like, 15, 20 pounds. I don't know,
Mhm.
probably like 10,
It was
15.
heavy.
Yeah, it
Even
was
now,
heavy.
I'm sure if I lifted that thing, I'd be like, man,
But
fuck.
yeah, I bring it to APOC, and APOC's like, oh, well, you got to wear this. I'm like, yeah, I'll do it. And he's like, you got to wear it like every time we walk out. And I'm like, I got it. And I did it. And it was the same thing with like, I don't know, there was like a time when Ray Ramsey was booking, and this was like very like in between like transitions because that's who we had, and dude hated me for the longest time. So every match I was in got the fuck beat out of me, and I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm going to be the best guy that gets the fuck beat out of him there ever has been. And I would have like guys like Vic the Bruiser and Vito Andretti or Guido Andretti and anyone he like put at me. I'm like, they're like, are you good with taking chops? I'm like, do as many as you want. And they're like, I hit hard. I'm like, yeah, do it. And I'd like, and every time afterwards, they'd be like, why are you getting beat up? Like you do what you're told and you're good. I'm like, people don't like me anymore. I don't know. But like, so that I never got to develop Karn in OVW. I was kind of the guy, no matter what I did, that just got beat up a lot after the whole APOC thing.
What now? Well, let me before you continue, let me rewind even back because there had to be a point before any of this, and you had to
Yeah.
say like, all right, well, I got to go out there. What am I going to do? So the Cody Carnage I remember was basically just like, you know, some sort of modified paintball mask, contacts, and
Yeah, yeah.
gloves
So I
and
mean,
Little Winter
sweats.
Soldier deal, right?
yeah, it was
Yeah, a little bit.
it was basically my initial idea was I was the goth kid in school, and I'm like
Mhm.
it was literally just bringing that over because I wore contacts and fangs in high school. It wasn't anything
Mhm.
new to me, so it
Mhm.
looked like a character to people at OVW because it was so outlandish, but it was pretty much just me. The only difference was I couldn't cut promos, so I didn't talk, and I just made him more of like a creature type deal
Mhm.
because changed my stance a little bit with how I walked and my posture and just like promo wise, just made noises and kind of let kind of APOC take the reins on what needed to be said when something needed to be said.
Mhm.
Um, but then like those developments happened, and I kind of like slowly started to peel away that character. It got less and less like the contacts came out. Um, Still wore like the red and black collars. The mask came off. The mask was the first thing to go because like, and that happened in OVW because I think it was Adam Revolver was like, you need to show your face. Don't wear a mask. Why are you wearing a mask? That's not your gimmick. You don't wear the mask the whole time in the match. You're not like a luchador. Don't wear the mask to the ring. Cameras in your face, closest when you're in your entrance. You want people to know who you are, right? And I'm like, well, yeah. I'm like, no more mask. Okay. Then slowly, the next thing was the contacts. Like, again, same thing as the mask. They're like a mask just for your eyes. Don't use contacts. Okay, so it was really like I don't remember who else. I think it was Pops and Revolver that really like started to get me out of the whole goth thing, or at least to an extreme degree. Then I kind of took a little break from OVW and didn't really do any wrestling. I did like a couple indie shows for free because it's what I liked to do, but I wasn't good enough to get paid at the time, so I just drove to Southern Indiana every week and just kept in ring shape.
Let me press pause on that right now. Vic, what do you think about that? What he just said about the Pops and Revolver saying, hey, get rid of all this shit. What do you think about that?
I mean, I get it, because I think that was one of the things where like it seemed, as much as it was you, it's like that goth kid in high school, and I think they were just trying to get you to evolve from that. But I mean, in wrestling, it's always those things,
Right.
where like you take something away and then eventually you're going to come back to it, but you'll find a more natural fitting way to do it. I don't know. Sometimes the people that like say these things, and this is nothing against Pops or Adam Revolver, because they're both very good with character stuff and evolution of things. But sometimes you got to strip all these things away to just bring it back, but to make it work. But I think that was kind of, if I'm remembering correctly, it was kind of to get you to evolve into more yourself instead of just being the same kid that you were in high school. It was like me getting rid of the cloak and putting on a cowboy hat and some jean shorts that I still wear to this day. It's just how it goes. You know what I mean? Like I got same thing when I got to FCW and I got signed. Like I'd cut my hair and shaved my face, and then it turned out I had to keep my hair cut and my face shaved. I had to cut my hair even shorter, or else I wasn't going to be there anymore. And then, just like what Dr. Tom told me, he says they're going to tell you this shit because sometimes they got nothing else to tell you. They don't know what else to tell you, and this kind of goes around. Like this is classic wrestling anywhere, and it'll all come back full circle, and you're going to wind up doing the same shit that you got told not to do in the first place.
Right.
That's
right. That was my whole point of throwing to you in the middle of this thing, because it's like, I don't know, man. I feel like those little details or whatever that can set you apart, I don't think that having those things is always necessarily a crutch.
Right.
It's just decorations. Like if you're wearing that mask out to the ring for your entrance, that's just accessories.
Yeah.
They're still going to see your face. They're going to know who you are. But the people that see that mask will be like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool mask. Nobody else has that. Mm-hmm. And then you get rid of it. They're like, hey, what happened to the mask? They're already that little bit less invested in you. So like, I don't always agree with that shit. One example I always think of in terms of that was Del Rio. Like he had a Bentley and fireworks and his own ring announcer and a little towel and like a bunch of gimmicks that was like really playing up how this guy is just fucking outrageous, right? Yeah. And then one by one, they're like, "No, fuck all that. You don't deserve your own announcer. Just go out there. All right, you know what? We're tired of bringing a car out here every week, so just go out there. You know what? You don't need pyro. Just walk out there. Just you and your towel. That's it." And then I swear he like lost the towel too at some point. And it's just like, as fantastic of a talent as he is, I kind of liked all that stuff.
Right. Well, especially like on a show like WWE, you're watching it for the show part of it. Like that's all what made it. Like even, I mean,
and it's heat.
Right. I mean, think about like when Eddie and Chavo used to come out in the car. Like, sure, your entrance might take 5 to 10 minutes. I don't care. It's awesome. Like,
take it off my match.
That it takes that. Yeah, I was like, you can take it all, and then those guys are still going to get to put on a match afterwards. So it's great. Del Rio was kind of in that same boat, and I don't know if it was just personalities that caused things to slowly get stripped away. You know what I mean? Like
we can take some guesses why, but right. But so all right. So Kharn, now you're just a regular guy trying to figure things out. Now you're not allowed to do anything cool. No.
And the thing, so just to backtrack a little bit, I remember when they were having me kind of get out of this character or whatever. And I was kind of liking it, actually. I want to make that like clear. I'm like, I'm doing something new. You know, being able to actually wrestle instead of being a gimmick. I was like, okay, cool. But I was like, man, you know, what if I just went a complete 180? And it never happened. And I'm kind of mad that it never happened. But me and Ali came up with this because Ali was helping write at the time, I think. Came up with this cool storyline with her name was Solo. I don't remember her full name, but
Christina Solomita. She's still
yeah, Christina.
I ran into her a couple of years ago.
She was like the I don't know if she was the ring announcer, the aide at the time. She's just getting into the ring stuff. I came to Ali with the idea, like, what if there was some like therapist gimmick that, you know, got me out of this, like hypnotist or whatever, out of this creature type deal. And he's like, oh, that'd be great if we had someone that could do that, but what if you did it for love instead? And we had this gimmick plan where I fell in love with Solo and she was scared of me until I started like stripping all of like the goth stuff and became more of a just, you know, a wrestler. And then like we did like a thing together where she was like my manager, or, you know, intergender tag matches or whatnot. It never happened, but it was a thing that like I got to the point where I wanted to do that. And then who knows what situations occurred, storylines changed. I left OVW, but anyway, back to like how I was developing my character. So I was at this point where I was still kind of like doing some of the goth stuff. Like I had tights now instead of like the pants. You know, different kind of. I don't know who to really compare it to. That's on TV right now or anything, but there was still a goth element to it. But I was a wrestler that was goth, not a goth that was thrown into a wrestling ring. And I was playing around with that. And I went back to OVW for just a visit one time. And they wanted me to do a match and stuff. And I was kind of going back into the contact and stuff, but this is when I gained like probably 30 pounds, and Ali decided to take a whole bunch of pictures of me and send them out to guys that aren't there anymore. Look, Kharn's on steroids. This is a joke. But I was like, I'm really not. I really didn't. I never did anything other than stuff you could probably buy at GNC. I just learned how to work out and eat more because that was my thing. I didn't have time to do or just didn't have the knowledge of. But they're like, you can get a job now with how you look. So I went after, you know, I did my like week or whatever there. I started thinking about that when I went back into like my indie spots and started going more to like and the whole goth thing never really left completely. But it was like almost corporate goth almost. I got put in this group where I like wore a blazer. It was Rodney Rush was the manager of it. He like does a lot of indie stuff in Indiana. He manages Congo Kong right now, I think, who's a good friend of mine. But Rush Wrestling Enterprises, and I was like the centerpiece in every place that he went. They put the belt on me, which I didn't. I was like, whatever, that's cool. But I got to get more mic skills that way. And that's when I started doing more work on my promo type stuff and was more like I'm trying to think of somebody I can compare it to. It was almost like a Damian Priest, like now, like very like has the gothic element, but can talk on the mic and can do the wrestling. And it's just like the gothic elements there.
Got it. Eyeliner. Got it.
Yeah. There's sometimes I tried some stuff like that. Actually, I did eyeliner. Sometimes I went back to contacts and it just didn't work. So I just relied on, you know, whatever wrestling gear I had with that element put on it, and really worked on the promos and stuff and the character and got more in depth with it. But there was this kind of corporate element to it. And eventually, I guess at the end of my indie run, I was realizing that relationship to the people I was working with kind of brought out what character I was, because a lot of and I learned this a lot in acting too, after the fact, but I was with this girl in wrestling. She was my little sister is what we decided she was, because she was in it was Heroes and Legends Wrestling up in Fort Wayne, and they put her with me because she was brand new. She was in training, and they're like, Kharn, would you take her out to other shows and, you know, kind of like let her be manager, because that's what she wants to do. She doesn't necessarily want to wrestle, but she needs some different environments. And on our first,
and now you know how APOC felt.
Yeah, right, exactly. I think I had that thought at one point. I was like, man, this is probably how APOC felt when I was like, it's like, damn. But on our first show we went to, on the ride there, I'm like, how do you feel about being my little sister as a character? And she's like, oh, that'd be great. I'm like, because pretty much every manager, whether indie or contracted, is assumed to be the guy's girlfriend. And she's like, oh, was that what we were supposed to do? I'm like, not necessarily, but when you see a girl come out with a guy and there's no actual character basis to go off of, it's kind of assumed. And so we started this whole gimmick where like I was the big brother, she was the little sister. We cut promos with her doing like little sister gimmick stuff. Like every time I'd say something, she'd ask me why, just over and over and over again. And we get in like bits like that. So it was an element of comedy that I never got to do comedy before. So that added to my character. And during this time, I was going back and forth doing extra spots for WWE and, you know, working on promos and stuff. But I wasn't up to par with, you know, what someone like Dusty Rhodes would qualify as on television promos. So that was still my difficult spot. But through those six kind of promo sessions and stuff that I did as extra work, I developed the character of Kharn Alexander, not the wrestler, but an artist. But the art that I delve into is violence. And I never used it. Only in WWE. I used it for like a character that could actually be utilized. And they're like, you improved greatly since your first time with us. And basically what I was told was, we'll call you. And I was like, okay. They're like, if we have a spot for you, if we have something we think you can do, we'll give you a call. And they're like, I'm like, well, like and at that time I started acting school as well. Because that's what they wanted me to work on, is my acting. So that's why I went to college, was because basically WWE told me to. And I was like, well, what do I need to do in the meantime? Like, honestly, nothing. And I'm like, okay. They're like, we'll retrain you. We'll, you know, do whatever we need to for the character we have in mind. You just got to wait on the call. So at that point, I was kind of like enjoying acting a lot more, because I was getting into more character stuff as other characters that I didn't have to kind of attach my former Kharn persona to. Because, you know, you do a play and it's, you know, all about the script, not about what you've done in your, you know.
There were no plays about Kharn Alexander out there that
well,
you
could. There are some characters that I did delve into Kharn for, but I got more variety. So at that point, I just stopped wrestling and went full into acting. And that was probably I've done like matches for friends and stuff here and there in between the time, but that was probably 2014 was when I had my last official match, and it was against Bob Holly, the Heroes Legends.
You know, it's funny you talking about making your character into an artist, because that was exactly what I did at one point in FCW as well. And it was pretty much all the same context of that. And then Aiden English went up and cut a similar promo of pretty much all the same thing. Like it was all kind of different context, but more or less the same thing. We were both all trying to play off the art and the artistry of what we do. And then I got put in the Ascension, so that all went out the bag. But that was actually like what I was selling myself as they just made the switch for me, because it seemed like something that nobody else was really doing, especially not properly. And even then, English took it in a different direction. You know, his art was obviously everything that he was doing, but he didn't make it so much about the violence. But that was definitely what I had focused on, because that was kind of the first thing that I managed to catch Dream with a little bit when I cut I think the first promo I cut is that. He was kind of like, oh, shit, okay, I kind of see this. And I remember even Chris Chambers, he was like a longtime producer for WWE. Like, I don't even know if producer is the right word, but he had been in the production and character development, all that sort of stuff for many, many years. One of the higher ups within the company. And he actually came out of the office the one day I cut that promo, and he commented on it, because he's like, that's really good. He's like, that's something you can sell to Vince, because Vince always talks about everything being art within the ring. And so he hadn't even told me then. It's funny, because I just saw a tweet about this yesterday, but why Vince always left the canvas completely clean, because it's a clean canvas for us to make our art upon, supposedly. But that was like a big selling thing, and they wanted somebody who could actually do something like that. But
and then they said, you know what? A second thought, just growl. We're just going with growling now.
I mean,
you and Connor go growl.
We didn't growl a lot at first, actually. I mean, when we had to cut pretty intelligent sounding promos, from what I recall. We just did.
Well, you growled the promos. Right. I mean, by the time I saw you, that's what was going on. I did think you guys were intelligent. I liked your promos, but they were a little growly. Not that I have a problem with that.
I can't remember most of them that we did. No, like that's if I have a terrible memory for things like matches and promos and stuff. Like there's like a handful of things in the 20+ years that still stick in my memory, unfortunately.
That's funny. It was
go ahead.
The same. It was about the same time. I think you were in still in developmental when I decided to go that direction with my character for WWE. So it's interesting that we kind of both had similar ideas at the same time somehow.
Wow.
But mine was my artist character. I actually used reference to the canvas, and I think they didn't like this too much, but I talked about painting the canvas in my opponent's blood. At the time, they were still kind of in the PG era, and they're like, yeah, maybe like that much violence isn't really what we're going for, because I think John Cena was still the champion, and they were having like the kid show that they tried to do like the hour before Brawl or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, well, you know,
like don't take it literally. He's just doing a promo for you guys.
Yeah.
It's not like he has to go out there and say the exact thing he says in front of you.
Right.
You know, that's the kind of shit that's like.
They were super funny about that stuff. I'm pretty sure we got a promo one time that said, I don't know, we used the word die or kill, but it was like written. It was written in the promo.
Right.
And when we came back afterwards, like I remember somebody being like, "Why did you say this?" I'm like, "It's what was written." Like, they were like, "Well, that shouldn't have been said." I'm like, I mean, just doing what I'm told. You know what I mean? But they were pretty strict about certain words and phrases and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely get that for you guys doing it, if you're doing it for TV or for something else.
Yeah.
But if he's just doing it as like an audition of sorts, it's like, yeah, okay. I'm pretty sure he's aware that he's not going to be dragging a carcass all over the ring on television.
Right.
He should know that.
Whoever you would have done it in front of, like, I don't know if it was Regal or somebody else at that time, they have like what's already implanted by WWE in their head.
True.
So what's weird is like there's not a forgiveness for like, oh, you don't know this. It's just like, you didn't know, I'm going to tell you. That's the bottom line. You know,
yeah.
That's how that goes.
I think it was Stryker. Matt Stryker was the one at the time.
Oh, okay.
Matt Stryker, your teacher. I like Matt.
Yeah.
All right. So I would ask you, Vik, too, like similarly, because you had obviously a string of things you were trying. You know, you certainly at some point were like trying to see what would stick. Right. I'm sure you also had something that you felt like, hey, I know this will work. And then, so like from the what was taking it back, like to what we were talking about, the very first thing, obviously now you've never been a wrestler, but you're going to be, and you're like, okay, what am I going to do? So like, what was your very first wrestling gimmick, or how did you first debut? What were you doing, and how did you arrive at that?
In Stampede, I was given the name Bishop, I think, for my first few matches.
Okay. Just Bishop, like again, were X-Men characters, or
yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I was named after 2 different X-Men characters when I started. Funny enough, because it was Hotshot Johnny Devine, later known as Havoc in TNA. Who gave me that name, because he was also like a comic nerd or whatever.
Well, Havoc.
Yeah, and so because like he had stolen his name, like Hotshot, from Longshot, stuff like that. So I remember, he came up with Bishop, and I mean, honestly, I wasn't too much different than a young Cody Alexander, because I had my cargo pants on and a black mesh tank top that I used to wrestle in, and honestly, like, it's kind of funny because like from all the people that I know from started who've like had a million different characters in their head, I was just kind of always me. I didn't really, I
Mhm.
don't know. I never really got, I was never good with names, obviously, since all of mine have been pretty unoriginal. So I never had one kind of set and picked out or anything. Like I just wanted to learn to wrestle and to wrestle. So once I started to wrestle, I didn't really give a shit what I was called. I guess like I think I might have had a different name too before Bishop. I can't remember what it was, but like even then, I think I spent maybe a month wrestling for Stampede as Bishop on these like town shows that they would run outside of Calgary, and then by the time like Stampede, I think they had TV for like I don't know, maybe a month after I actually started actively wrestling, they still had it, and so on one of my last or one of my first matches was on TV against somebody, and I'm pretty sure I can't remember if I was Apocalypse or Bishop, which one it was. But I know Bruce eventually I just remember being at a show and him being like, "I don't like Bishop." And I was like, "You don't like me?" It's like, "I don't like the name." And then he sat there thinking about it for a couple minutes, and then he just went, "We're gonna call you Apocalypse." And I went, "Yeah, okay, cool. Like, that sounds good." And so that was what I rolled with until OVW pretty much. And then, Joey and Roadkill and Nick were like, "We got to change this." They're like, "Everybody just calls you APOC, so we're just gonna call you APOC." And I was like, "Yeah, all right, cool." Because I mean, the same bullshit happened when I got to FCW. Who the fuck are you now? What's your name? Well, I gave
Mhm.
him like 50 names, and Kenobi Matt Martlero at the time was like, "You're not really selling me on any of these names." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know I was supposed to sell you on them. Like I thought you guys just take whatever random fucking name sounds best to you and you put it in the computer for crap generated." No, no,
Yeah.
no, that's not what we do. And I was like, "How'd you get Mike McGillicuddy then?" So that's a good
Well,
rib. Anyway, um, but so eventually that was even when it came to like Rick Victor, like I was like, I'm gonna be called Victor. Like I knew it. Like when I came up with that name, I was after like I'd had a meeting with Kenobi the one day, overthinking all of this bullshit. And I think I heard something on the radio, and I was like, Rick Victor. And so I just texted him that, and he was like, "That's stupid, but it sounds kind of right for some reason." I was like, "Yeah." And we had even made the statement, eventually you will probably just be called Victor. And I was like, "Yeah, I'm cool with that." And so even when I got switched to just Victor was not even by my choice. Me and Connor showed up at TV one day. And they just said, "You're now Victor and you're Connor with a K."
mhm.
I went, "All right, cool."
Yep.
So
Yeah,
that's always how my evolution has gone as I see
a,
myself.
a true Canadian, just going with the flow, not trying to ruffle too many feathers.
I mean, I ruffled enough feathers in developmental as it was. I was definitely was full of a lot more piss and vinegar than I am nowadays. But you kind of have to be. It's the only way you'll survive in those places. So
Well, yeah. So, I guess then because I was gonna ask, but I guess you kind of answered it. Um, but like I was gonna ask, like, so in all that time when you were kind of trying to fight, because it seemed like you went through a period, you're trying to figure out what's gonna be the thing, like who am I actually gonna end up, and I was gonna ask during that time if you thought you hit on something. Obviously they didn't end up going with it, but did you think you hit on something before they just gave you the ascension,
um,
that would have been a money gimmick, or were
yeah,
you
I don't
always
know.
just
I mean, it wasn't much of a gimmick. I mean, it was more or less just being myself. Like the only
mhm,
gimmicky thing about it was Terry Taylor wanted me to bite myself at one point in time. He has an autistic kid. One of his kids is autistic, and they kind of do that when they get. I mean, how he put it to me was when they get kind of like stressed out or like over excited or whatever, they kind of would
mhm,
start to bite at themselves. And I was like, "What?" He showed me, and I was like, "Okay, like I guess I can do that." And so I know that there's one match with me and Seth from NXT, and it's a very, I mean, I think the match is like 7 minutes long or something, and it's a good match for what it is. But like, there's some of that in there, and I was like, I watched it recently because I know I'd sent a couple of my matches to one of my students, just been like, here's a good example of like me working as me in a spot trying to get over, as opposed to like what's happened after kind of being put through the system, you know, being told this is working, this isn't working type of thing, and where you wind up. And so there's one match with me and Seth that's like 20 minutes long from FCW, and it's before like my hair is kind of cut and stuff like that, and it's a sweet match. And then there's this match with me doing that character, and I didn't think it was bad, but I thought that was more or less what they saw was working. I just didn't think the biting thing was going to stay. I thought there was a mentality to the character of being a little bit crazy and stuff that I could work with, but I mean, it wasn't something that I would call a gimmick that I thought was going to, I don't know, get me out of there or get me noticed, more or less. Like, it just kind of seemed like we were throwing shit at the wall until we made something stick for me. I was kind of always being told I needed my gold robe. Like, I was referred to a lot like Dustin, like how, you know, Dustin was really good, but he was only seen as like a certain way until he put on all the shit with Gold Dust, and then he was seen, you know, billed as a top star. And so I was kind of told that I needed to do something similar. And I mean, I'd pitched being an Ascension multiple times. Me and the guys had pitched it multiple times, and Dream would never bite on it. And I mean, really, it just took Hunter finally asking somebody, like, "Hey, who would work with Connor?" And then, as fate had it, Norman Smiley and Billy Kidman had been talking about it 5 minutes beforehand, and I was the one that Norman was saying he should be an Ascension, and that's just kind of how it happened. So I mean,
so the Ascension was that was something that they just fit you into. They were already going to do something like that with whoever.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm version 5. Like, me and Connor were pretty much legitimately like version 5 of Ascension, because it was originally Ricardo. Like, it was Ricardo Rodriguez's idea. He was the one that initially put together Ascension, and so he had Shaw, Orlando Colon, Connor, Tom Latimer. I feel like somebody else was in there. I don't know why it's blanking on me, but so there was them. And then they kind of interchanged for a little while. I think eventually Orlando got called up, and then it was just Connor and Tom and Shaw. And then Shaw was gone for a little bit, and then Connor broke his back, and then it was just Tom, and then it was Tom and Shaw. And I know at that point, like, me and Tom did a couple matches together where, like, one time they were like, "Okay, we'll let you be Ascension," and it was a clusterfuck of a match. It was very reminiscent of DCW at that time with some of the talent I was working with, and it was funny though. Like, we laughed about it. And then, you know, Dream would keep telling me, "No, you know, I think something else for you, baby. This ain't it." That was always what he'd say. And then at the point,
but he wouldn't tell you what it was he saw for.
Yeah, there was never that answer. And there wasn't anything like, nobody was steering me in any direction at that point in time either. It was more or less telling me, like, you got to figure something out or you ain't going to be here much longer. And so that was when I'd kind of come up with the artist thing. And so that was kind of what seemed like they were trying to figure out at the time. And then, I mean, I think Tom had been let go, Shaw was gone, and Connor had been on the road. And so the day we were filming, like, the cold open or whatever for NXT, I'd just finished filming something, and Chris Chambers grabbed me and he goes, "Hey, has anybody talked to you? Like, has Hunter talked to you?" And I was like, "No. Like, why would Hunter talk to me? Like, that doesn't happen." He goes, "Oh, well, apparently he wants to see you and Connor just, like, together. He just wants to film something really quick together so he can see you two, what you look like together." And I was like, "Cool, but this is all I got." Like, I just had the gear I was wearing at the time, which wasn't very Ascension. It was much more like House of a Thousand Corpses style, I would say. And filmed a shot, and that was it. I mean, there was no looking back, and there was no longer any, you need a fuzzy jacket or anything like that. Like, I can remember kind of as a smart ass saying to Kenobi one day, "Do you need me to write another character bio for you?" And he just, like, it was like when you see somebody, like, see the defeat in their in the bullshit they've had to, like, put people through, that was his job. Just, you know, here's the bullshit you have to go through. And he just went, "No, We get it. And I was like, oh, interesting. You finally get it. Okay. I now have to say absolutely nothing, and you understand. Cool. That's interesting how it all works.
Yeah, Kenobi's always been like that. Back to him in a second. So the original Ascension was all those people. Was that all still like Illuminati imagery and the same idea, or was that just the name of it?
It was just the name of it, and I'm
okay.
trying to remember because the first time I saw them cut a promo, I was like, "This is fucking badass. I need to be in this."
Right.
But
Right.
then
Okay.
I wasn't so much Illuminati, but it was. I remember them talking about like the fourth dimension and stuff like that.
Okay.
So it seemed more gothic and type of thing. And I know Dream, once he saw the initial promo that they did, he initially was like, "I love this, Ricardo. You're out. You're already doing something else. Go away," type of thing. And Dream took it and was like, True Blood was hot at the time, so Dream wanted to be. He wanted them to be like vampires, but never say that they were vampires. That was the whole thing. He's like, if Vince here's the vampire, he's going to be out. Like, now. He doesn't ever want a vampire. Vampires are stupid. But you guys will have people think you're vampire. But we'll never say vampire. Okay. So that was like the whole, like, kind of production of them at that time. So.
Okay. Yeah. So Kenobi. Was he already at like? I forget.
Yeah, he got signed like a year and a half before I did. So
yeah, I'm saying it's like, was he ever even at OVW when you were there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, he was there for a while.
Okay, I can't remember this timeline, so I'm just trying to. Okay.
Yeah, no, he was there the whole time because I remember when he finally got signed. Danny was like, "I can't believe I finally get rid of this asshole." You know, was kind of what he said in the meeting, like in a very loving way. You know, because Kenobi had his ups and downs, as anybody in wrestling usually does at these stages. But I mean, so he was good because like when I got there, he was willing to help me because he knew that like I was a talent. He'd already seen what I'd done in OVW, and he knew that there was high potential. And you know, probably my guess is like if he figured helping me out some way would probably help him out. Because like his job kind of became, he made like his own kind of spot for himself, I guess, within the company, which probably wound up shooting him in the foot later on. But he was supposed to be the liaison,
Yeah.
like the bridge between developmental and the main roster, because they were completely different systems at that point in time, and they weren't really paying attention to developmental. So like he would do a lot of character work and stuff like that with people, and he'd kind of let you know like if things were going well or they weren't. I mean, he definitely came to me one day and was like, if you don't cut your hair today and shave, you're not going to be here next week, let alone tomorrow. And I was like, cool, all right, I'm going to go get a haircut and shave and I'll be back later. And he was like, good idea. And I didn't get fired.
It's good to know your value as a human being is just your head hair.
Very much so. I mean, that's just the dumb thing. Like, I can remember having a conversation with Ty Bailey where he's like, Johnny Ace doesn't like this. I'm like, he doesn't like my face? He's like, yeah, something about it. I was like, cool, I can't really fucking change that. You know? And that was what I eventually got told to do. Shave your face, cut your hair. All right. Grow it all back.
Yeah, amazing. Kharn, any Kenobi stories?
Yeah, I got like one. I mean, this is actually when I was an extra in WWE. He was, you know, I guess as part of his job was to kind of manage the extra talent, get them where they're supposed to go, instruct them on what they're supposed to do. This was when Adam Rose was a big thing.
Yeah, I was going to say what his actual job at that point was wrangling the Rosebuds.
Yeah.
So he'd been demoted from whatever the liaison job to that's what he was doing.
There was always like 20 or so, like around 15, 20 of us. So I did it a couple times. The first time I did it, they let us like pick out our costumes. And I was in, not grad school. I was in undergrad at the time, and I was, acting and stuff. I'm going to be a clown because I like clowning class, whatever. I'm going to be this clown character. And Kenobi's going over what everyone has to do. He's like, guys, it's a party. It's great. You know, you're the Rosebud. You got to go out with them. You got to be celebrating, jumping around, but don't be too much because Adam Rose is the star, etc., etc. And then he looks at me and he's like, because if I see an unenthusiastic clown out there, you're not asked back. And I'm like, like, and everyone could tell that he's like literally talking right to me. And I'm like, what the fuck, man? Like, okay, so I went out there and I was like, not as enthusiastic to like get in trouble to be like so crazy that, you know, but I was probably on par with Adam Rose, like just enough to be like, yeah, fuck you, man. I'm enthusiastic. I don't care what you think about me. and after that, he never complained about any sort of like acting ability or enthusiasm from me or what I needed to do ever again. It was always just general, like, here's your instructions. I know you can do it. Cool.
Yeah.
That's like my Kenobi story. I guess he just like, I don't know, assumed I was the same Kharn Alexander from OVW from, I don't know, 7 years prior. And I'm like, bro, like,
Hey,
people change. Like, you don't got to call me out on it. Like, it would have been a different story if he would have pulled me aside and said, hey, man, I know you used to have troubles with this. But he was like, let me just call Kharn out in front of every other extra here and, you know, a few superstars as well, and it'll be fine. Like, dude.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, he was never like a huge dick to me, but he and I never really saw eye to eye completely. So, but
no, he was never a huge dick. He was always just enough of a
just
dick.
enough to irritate me.
Yeah.
Like,
He was very condescending.
yeah.
He had that like perfect little like twinge of condescending at the end of usually any question that he asked you, which made him come off like a dick.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember that, like, it was early when I got there. For some reason people were outside waiting, but like, I'm all the way from California. I don't know anybody. I don't have it. So if I go to the Davis Arena, I'm at the Davis Arena now. And if I can't go in, I'm out there now. I didn't have a car or anything like that. So like he, you know, he's like, hey, you know, why don't you come in here and sit with us? It was like him and Aaron LaMotta, I think, were in a car. And so I just sat in the back seat of the car. But just like, even him asking me to like come in the car, it was like the hardest thing in the world for him to do. You know, like, I can't believe I have to do this right now.
Yeah.
Will you just please sit in this car and not freeze to death? Thanks. You know, like, so, do you guys know how he got the Kenobi name?
I'd heard it.
He wrestled as a Jedi. They used to play the clip at the beginning of DCW all the time. I think Danny managed to sneak it in there on him because he used to handle all that production stuff for DCW. And then Danny put in the little clip that showed him coming out in his Jedi attire with his long hair and everything. I remember he did like a point at the end of his little spin, and somebody at one point in the entrance put a little star on it. It was like the only like special graphic that was in the DCW opening was for Kenobi, and he never once wrestled on the show because he'd been hurt by that point or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, he sort of, you know, if you guys are, nobody that's watching knows what we're talking about or who this person is, but he, like, it just picture like a little, like a episode 2 Attack of the Clones era Ewan McGregor, kind of like this guy kind of looked like that at that time.
Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor mixed together with the way his hair was at that point. Sorry,
definitely a white guy with a beard. So, you know, which there aren't enough of in wrestling these days. We need more guys with beards. Oh, we got a run in here.
Yes, my wife just took off and let the puppy in my room. So
hey, that's great for content.
yeah.
So let's well, speaking of matches, let's talk about matches. So both of you guys, similar situation. So I'm in this gimmick called the Army of Two, and my idea for the Army of Two is it's us versus everybody else in the entire wrestling business. And of course, how we get that across on TV is, we just put them in 6 and 8 man tags all the time. So, but to Karn's point about not getting heat, you don't tell the booker what you want. You know, I didn't to a fault. I didn't tell anybody what my ideas were or anything, because I didn't want them to think I was trying to be, you know, too over or comfortable or whatever. So, you know, to my own detriment, to our detriment, because, you know, and I apologize to Timmy Baltimore on on when I had him on one of my shows, I had him on and I apologized to him. He's like, I should have told you some of the ideas for what we were trying to get across, but I just felt like me trying to tell you anything about me was just going to get me heat. So I just left you out to try to figure out what we were trying to do. And you did and I was using that to put him over, saying how great of an announcer he is, because we didn't give him anything, but he still basically kind of got it. Yeah. But that's the thing. Like, you don't want to come across as that douchebag that's like, actually, so what we're trying to do is, you just don't want to feel like that, but you need to. And people like the announcers, they want you to, right? So I'm not going to tell Rip, like, look, I know that you want us to do this job for Super Gloves or whatever, but we actually have like a gimmick and a direction we're going in that we think would be valuable, so that, if we do put somebody over, it means something. You can't say that. Right. So whatever. So, and it's just like, and you guys are teaming with Cody Carnage tonight. It's like, sure we are. So, we had some fun with it. I
remember that.
And the same thing, like, how many of these weird ass matches it's like us two and APOC and Albarone, or or these 10-mans or whatever, or like one of those weird, I swear we were in a match one time, I think you were on the opposite side, Vic, where it was like, like one of those 10-mans is like most falls till curfew or some weird old school
too. Yes.
Yeah, just so much great stuff. So I'll tell a story for each of you guys, and then I'll let you guys tell any funny memories that you have of matches around that time that maybe we were all involved in, or some of us, whatever. So for Kharn, it was, I was in the position where, it's like, we're kind of in charge of putting the match together, and the baby faces just have to do what we say. Right. So, so Kharn is like, I have this move I want to do, and maybe I can do this move. I don't remember what the move is, but just for the sake of argument, let's say it's a DDT. We'll just say DDT. It's like, I want to do my DDT. I was like, all right, sure. So, I said, I'll call it out. I'll call it out there. So we get to the spot in the match where, I want, Kharn to hit his DDT. Right. So I go, DDT. And he's like, what? And I said, DDT. And he's like coming closer, like, what? And I was like, almost, I guess the first row could probably hear me say, give me a fucking DDT. So he hits a DDT. And as you can imagine, the crowd went wild. They signed him to a contract immediately. This was his star-making performance. But yeah, that's my favorite memory, unironically, with Kharn in the ring. At the time, I'm sure he apologized to me a bunch in the back, but I was just like, get out of here, man. Whatever. It's like, it was funny to me, but it was very sort of like representative of what things were like around that time, and the sort of experience level, because I consider myself, like, I look at a guy like APOC coming in, I'm like, man, this guy's a fucking wrestler. And everybody else is like, I'm looking at, like, I'm green, and then I've got to be in charge of this guy that's so green. And it was definitely a feeling of the blind leading the blind. And even at my most confident, and even when I felt like I could go out there and do anything, I still had that sort of like, it's like, man, but if I could just be like APOC, like, as good as him. My memory of APOC in a match is everything. So everything that you would do in the ring it seemed like it was pretty great as far as I remember feeling it. Everything looked good. The stuff you took looked good. You sold. The stuff you gave out felt good, but it didn't feel dangerous. Of course, I mean, if you're chopping a guy, you're going to chop a guy. That's just good. That's just good Canadian chopping, snug. You you take a front buckle. Like, I don't know what it is about Canadians or front buckles, but I guess after you saw Bret Hart all those years, you felt
I
like,
know to Brett, yeah.
how could I do any less? I've got
Yeah.
to kill myself on that front buckle. And so I was in a match this one time, and you grabbed a headlock and I shot you off and you tackled me. And when I hit the mat, and this wasn't, the tackle that you gave was so crisp, and I couldn't help but take a good bump, right? I'm not saying that you gave me a shoot tackle, but like I took a real good bump, and then I remember feeling like my body fell asleep. Like your foot falls asleep?
Yeah.
You feel the pins and needles? Yeah, like everything from the neck down fell asleep. And I could move, but I felt like my entire body was tingling. And whatever we did next, like however I fed up or whatever we got into or when you tagged out or whatever, but I just definitely have that distinct memory of taking the tackle. My body fell asleep, and it woke back up like when I was on the apron or something like that. But it was a little bit weird. Like, I guess I couldn't be too scared because I could still move, but it was definitely a sensation unlike anything I'd ever felt before.
Yeah, I kind of vaguely remember that now that you've brought it up, because I think I just grabbed you in a hold. I think after I tackled you, I must have like noticed like that you weren't moving or something. I probably covered you and asked if you were okay. And I think I remember you saying, "I'm a little tingly." I was like, all right, well, we'll just sit here for a minute, get to where we're going.
Yes. I'm sure that bump was on television, but it's lost to time now, so it's too bad. But it was
it's funny,
probably the best shoulder tackle ever recorded.
I was thinking about it because, like, at that time, back then, Danny would get so pissed if anybody put that stuff online. And I know Pops afterwards, and I think probably by the time after Danny left, started putting a bunch of the DCW stuff on his page and whatnot with that. Because I remember when I used to always see him tweet it out. But what gets me now is like a lot of the stuff that I know I booked for in OVW was never online. Like mine and Von Lilas's stuff was actually never online because Danny forbid us to take any of that footage and put it online. And even for me to get footage of some of that stuff before I left, it was always time coded. So that Danny said he knew if any of that stuff ever got out there, he knew where it would come from. And I was like, well, yeah, obviously it'd be from the guy you fucking gave it to. But, I was thinking about how ridiculous it is now because I was like, man, there's like a whole bunch of good wrestling that nobody's ever seen because it's not online. And I mean, there was so many talents with that stuff. And I mean, all because we were respecting Danny's wishes. Where, I mean, nowadays it's like, oh, well, there's a good chunk of like my career history and many other people's career history that nobody has any clue about. And I don't know how many guys were actually ever able to get that footage. Like I was one of the few because I was begging Danny for it so that I could, try to make myself a highlight reel or something like that for when I was trying to get a job.
Yeah, it's got to be somewhere.
Yeah, and, I mean, I know Pops has probably all the DCW stuff. So.
Yeah, we'll have to see what we can do about that.
Like the Void Century.
Yeah,
the Void
Century.
Century.
I mean, and it was what we were trying to do to keep, OVW alive at that time too. Because I think there was a bunch of weird stuff. Like it did get switched to like a different channel, but I think we had like a longer time block or something like that. So there was like more stuff that was being used on it. But I mean, none of it ever, I don't know, as far as I know, has ever seen the light of day online. But I mean, I know I still have a bag of DVDs somewhere from OVW and all my stuff, but it's all, it's sitting in a book somewhere in my room here. Nobody's watching it. Von Lilas is the only one that ever breaks out her old stuff to watch it.
Right. All right. So real quick, any memories, Kharn, any match memories from involving like,
Man,
the three of us, or
you brought up that like them putting me with you every now and then. I just remember the first time we were tagged together and you guys were doing the Army of Two thing. For some reason, everybody's character work just like meshed so well. Because I walk out and I'm like myself, but they're like, that's not Kharn's music. And then you guys walk out behind us and Zeus is doing his eyeball thing and you're doing, your agent Williams thing. And then you guys just stop and are like, the fuck is this? you know what, we'll use them. It's fine. And then like you're like instructed, like it wasn't even just the entrance, it was throughout the match. We just like our characters for some reason really worked, though they were so different. But in that scenario, I don't even remember who we were wrestling. Might have been like probably
Was it the four of us?
I think it was just
there were some, but I know which one he's talking. When he's talking about this one time where it's like, you know how we would face away from the camera and then do the about face.
Yeah.
Like he's looking at the camera the whole time, and we about face, he goes the other way. So like it just, you know, that was that. And then I'm sure there were other times, whether they were like dark matches or other TV matches, where like we were all in there like on one side.
So there was some 4-man or 8-man tags that was both teams, but the one I remember is that one where it was just the three of us, and they're like, "Kharn needs something to do tonight. We'll make this a 6-man." And you know, I don't remember, like the Alaskan Assassin and Richard Cranium or something, and somebody else, a judge or something, just a random group of 3. It was like, okay, but like
that's
the what?
Judge Reason.
You reminded me of the judge because I'm still friends on Facebook with him or something. But so sometimes I see his pictures and I'm like, I know this guy, but that was what I was missing was the judge.
Yeah,
Judge Reason, Judge Reggie Reason.
Right.
Yeah, that was mine. And then just like every time, like you kind of brought it up with the move I wanted to do, but you were always very, compared to most people at OVW, very giving with letting me try things. I'm like, hey, here's this ridiculous thing. The worst you would do would be like, let's tweak it a little bit so no one gets hurt. But you know, you were very much like, hey, like, because you were, you know, you like you said, you were relatively new too, so you were also trying new stuff out and figure things out. So I think you had that same like concept of like, you know, if I want to do that, let's, you know, let some other guys do it. But you were, you know, enough above me to like know what was a little too much and what was, you know, kind of okay to try out. So I really appreciated that, like that guidance and just like that willingness to let me probably make some mistakes and learn from it when we did our matches. Whereas most people are like, yeah, you're not doing that. You're just going to do what I say in the ring. I'm like, okay, you know.
Right.
But
well, the only way you're going to realize how lame it is if you do it. So
exactly.
That's why I let you do it. That's the best way to teach you. What about you, Vic? Any like any memories of it, us in matches or anything like that from that time? I know it probably, like, since it was forever ago and it all kind of runs together. I know that's how it is for me.
Yeah, I mean, I remember us being in a match together, and I know one of our opponents was probably like the Alaskan Assassin and Big Cat. I feel like the one thing I remember was when we finally worked together, like whether we were on a team or opposed, was I was like, oh, finally somebody I don't really have to worry about. Like at least people that like know ABC. That was such a big thing where I was like, cool, I don't have to worry about these two on you know, something like this. It's just the rest you had to usually worry about.
Right.
I can't, like I said, I can't remember a lot of stuff from back then, other than just like it was always that struggle to try to like just get a passable match. That's all I was ever after at that point in time. So I feel like I remember we finally had one, but you know, I can't remember who we worked. I just know it was one of those 8-man tags. I always remember Alaskan Assassin being on the other side of them. Probably Specs.
Probably.
Because like I remember how respectful Specs was to me all the time. Like it was unreal to me.
Unsung hero Specs.
Very much, yeah. Because like there was a bunch of, you know, guys like that who were always like, they're awesome because they were good dudes and they wanted to learn and they just were trying their best. And I mean, Specs, like he did have something to him. You know, so that's all I can really remember. Like so many of those matches, just like it's all a blur because it all blurs together. Like
we didn't work together that much because the way Rip had a hierarchy, he took anybody that knew anything and they were the heels and they were the leaders. And so you and I wouldn't need to work with each other because we had to wrangle some other people.
Right, yeah.
So the times that we actually get in there, and you know, I felt the same way anytime I remember this one time, just real quick. Was it Brandon Kaplan had a friend Like he brought in, I forget his name or whatever, is a guy he knew, I guess, from the Indies or whatever, and he was not there long. But I remember him, him coming to me and saying, hey, shine this guy up or whatever, like as a favor, I'm like, sure. And then later on, so I'm in there with him for a while and I'm like, it's kind of like a two birds with one stone. Like I'm trying to shine him up and I'm trying to, give him some time because, this is a moment, I guess. So I just, whatever. And then later on, Rip, when we were watching the tape, Rip's like, Vet, you stayed in there way too long with this guy. Should have tagged out or whatever. And I was like, yes, sir. Even though I knew, like, I did it on purpose. It's not like I didn't know what I was doing. I did what I did on purpose. But, there was lots of times like that where, or there weren't enough times like that where you were in there with somebody that really knew. It was your job to be like, okay, you're a player coach right now. So that's why we never really cross paths too often.
Yeah, very true.
Now, Kharn, you said the Void Century. Okay, we don't have a ton of time, right? But we're all kind of, this is where we made some of our people might check out. But we're kind of at least to varying degrees anime guys. Okay, we're all One Piece guys for sure. Oh, yeah. So
I'm more behind than all you guys. I'm trying to catch up.
You'll get there. You're gonna get there.
I checked yesterday. Episode 619 was the last one I think I watched.
Like
so that's pretty good. There. I got to keep it like kind of behind a little bit because I know Hulu just dumped out all of those ones not too long ago. So if I finish it all right away again, then I have to wait for them to dump out the next couple hundred episodes because I didn't never watch it in the actual Japanese.
Oh, you got to do it. Even Kharn had to do it eventually.
So I think
you kind of forced me to.
Yeah, when I started, I think I actually started watching it with the subtitles, and then saw that there was only so much of it I was going to get through that was like subtitled that was out, and there was more actually of the English one, and so that was why I went with the English, and then that way too I can kind of like put it on and do something and listen to it at the same time and pay attention to like two things at once because whenever I'm at home I'm multitasking where I have something playing or watching and I'm doing three other things at the same time. But
right. Now Netflix is trying to own the whole thing, so eventually all the episodes will be on there in both languages. I'm sure
they're still
adding it.
Yeah, they're still way behind. Like because when they did their latest drop, it was only at the end of Impelled Down. I think is all that they had on there.
They've added Marineford on there, but you know what else they did? They're starting to run the weeklies.
Right.
So they're skipping the entire last body of it, but they're putting the new episodes on there weekly, which is crazy.
Okay. That was what I hadn't seen. I'd seen that they were doing something where they had it broken up into different sections, but yeah, I hadn't seen. I've definitely not watched anything new because like even I went to the new dungeon a month or two ago. Mm-hmm. Dawkins was wearing a shirt and I had no idea who it was because it's somebody newer in One Piece and like I'd made a reference about One Piece and he just points at his shirt. I was like, I'm not there yet. Like, I don't know.
Spoiler.
Like, cover that up. Turn that inside out.
Yeah. It's like don't say anything. So
Vic, when you get caught up on Netflix, if you need to like share my Crunchyroll, I got you.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. Cool. That'd probably be
so Kharn, you're all caught up, right? Everything.
Yeah. I'm actually starting. I just started. I'm trying to read up in the manga now, so I'm going to be even further ahead soon when I get time to actually sit down and have a couple hours of reading at a time.
It became necessary just for the reasons that Vic is saying because spoilers are everywhere.
Yeah.
So I was just like, you got to just be current with whatever's current. But yeah. So. How much? Well, Kharn, how much time do you got? I mean, I know that you had an out, but what do you?
You know what? I think that thing might not be till next week now, so we're just gonna make this
really
this month. Oh. Well, I get to choose. I mean, and I'll talk about it later. But,
okay.
Got some other stuff going on too, like
all right
later on in the day. But so don't worry about time. We'll just
we're not gonna go too long, but good to know that we don't just have 5 more minutes. All right, so so like so what are you working on these days? Any new stuff catch your eye?
Oh man, I got a couple new ones that just started up that I was gonna recommend over here for anyone still listening that wants anime, and definitely for you guys. one that's on Crunchyroll. I don't know if it's anywhere else. It is How Not to Use Healing Magic.
Is this one of those isekai,
isekai, but it's got like a different it's interesting because it centers around the healer in the party, and who's training him is somehow figured out a way to use healing magic like aggressively. So it's interesting, but it is an isekai. The other one is on Hulu. It is Undead Unluck.
Yes, Undead.
One that is
I haven't seen it yet.
It's super hard to explain. It's pretty absurd. But the powers in this world have to do with negating things. Like the undead guy, the guy that's named Undead can't die. The girl named Unluck, she basically touches you and you get a stroke of bad luck depending on certain circumstances. So
right.
Like
depending on the touch.
Yeah.
If she brushes against you, you'll get hit by lightning. If she kisses you, you'll get hit by a meteor.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
I'm gonna run and pee real quick, boys. I'll be right back.
No problem.
Good. Those two are ones I'm really been watching that I really like, and one that I was like behind on because I usually don't watch this style of anime was Classroom of the Elite.
Okay, I haven't watched it.
It's one that it's got a good story to it. It's not like like adventure or horror or any sort of like isekai type. So it's literally just these people that are at this really prestigious school that has very certain rules that. Competition is a huge thing overall, and the main character's super creative with how he solves the problems and stuff. And I didn't think I'd like it because I just put it on like Vik was saying, just have something in the background sometimes, but I can still watch. But then I got sucked into it, and I watched 3 seasons in like a week.
Oh well, must be good.
So then that's also coming out with new episodes. Those are the 3 that I've really been on recently, other than like One Piece and stuff like that. Before last season, Chainsaw Man was one I was really big on, but that was one that, and then you put me on Spy X Family. That one was really good. That's still going.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so like that's the thing about anime is a lot of people hear it and they have a certain preconceived notion or whatever, but it's really just a sort of like it's such a buffet because you can really get whatever you're looking for. There's probably some show based around that. They're not all about superpowers or wacky stuff or whatever. Some are just like they just be like regular TV shows except it's animated, like whether that's a drama or a sitcom or whatever. But so isekai is a term we just threw around like anybody really, but if you're not familiar, it's a whole genre of just things where people end up in some place that's not normal Earth. Yeah. They either show up in some fantasy setting or some futuristic setting, or they're in a video game all of a sudden or whatever. It just means another world, basically, is what the term means. So there's a whole, trendy genre right now of all these things that are like, is it wrong to pick up girls in a dungeon is one of like the earlier famous ones that sort of like, got popular. And then it started to be and they're usually based on like what they call light novels, which is like, it's just like a regular novel or like a young adult, like type novel, but they just have illustrations in some of them, like illustration every once in a while. So they call it a light novel. And a lot of those are based on that. So that's a big deal. But there's just so many of them that it's like, and so few of them are good. And even some of the ones that I tried out and they ended up kind of falling off a little bit. Like I really didn't, after season 2 of Rising of the Shield Hero, I no longer really cared. That kind of fell off. That time I got reincarnated as a slime is another one that was pretty good. But it didn't stay as good as it started out. So I just sidestepped the whole thing now altogether.
Did you ever finish Spider?
I never watched any more than what I told you I watched back when I told you that.
You got to watch the whole thing. It comes.
I can't. I have no time.
I switched to subs for you. You got to at least like give it a shot.
Bye. Guilt trip. All right, fine. He see what he did, Vic. He guilt tripped me. So
that's how it goes.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I was just asking Kharn like if there's any shows he's been into now. You're chugging along in One Piece about halfway through. Is there any other anime that you've either historically liked or anything that you're catching up on now?
I mean, like I just been One Piece is kind of a jump back and forth with like the other stuff that I watch, which isn't usually. I mean, nothing other anime wise. I tried to get into Invincible, the second season of Invincible recently. I don't know if you guys watched that one or
Yeah,
not.
I do.
But I watched the first, I don't know, 1 or 2 episodes, and I don't know. I was like, oh, somebody else playing the multiverse role. I was like, okay, now I'm kind of tapped me out in a way. So I was like, man, Marvel and DC have so much stuff with the multiverse that the last thing I need is another multiverse somewhere else.
Yeah, I definitely feel you on that. But
Yeah.
I actually thought that because I liked Invincible the first
Yeah, I
season.
liked the first season really. Like I thought it was cool and different, at
Yeah,
least,
but I did think the writing was a little bit ham-fisted in it. So I've actually thought the second season tightened up a lot of the dialogue, the scripting and stuff. Like I like that. But they're doing that thing where it's like you get half a season and then we take a break. So I think there's supposed to be some new episodes in March. I want to say like the second half of the second season's coming in March.
Right. Yeah.
But they left it on a decent cliffhanger. So I would, if you like the first season, I'd say stick with it. I understand what you're saying about the multiverse though. That's just like what we were talking about with Kharn here about all this whole anime, that there's a whole just genre of people getting transported to another world. Actually, one I'm watching right now, in case you want to add this to your list, Kharn, is Solo Leveling.
I'm watching it. Yep.
You watching that? Okay. Yep. So like that one's okay. That's pretty good so far. But again, that's more like that's more in common with like Sword Art Online or something than say any of these things with long, funny titles like, you know.
Yeah.
What's the full spider title called?
So
I'm a spider, so what? Or something like that. Yeah. What did you say, Vic? I didn't hear you.
Thinking about Sword Art Online though, have you started Shangri-La Frontier?
No.
It's a good one too. It's very.
You said that as though I was supposed to have started it. I never even. No.
It's a big one that's gotten super popular. It's very much based on a video game. There's no like stuck in the world or anything. So I didn't think I'd really like it. It's just a dude playing a massively realistic video game, and this is pretty entertaining. So it's not an isekai. So if you want to check that one out.
Oh, okay. All right. Vic, you said something. I didn't hear you.
Oh, I just said I had watched Sword Art Online up to a point.
Up to a point? Yeah.
Yeah, because then it just got too massive. It just got too kind of silly for me. I mean, I really liked the first season of it. I thought was great, and then after that, it kind of slowly dropped off for me. I want to say, but because like that's such a great idea, especially with where we are nowadays with technology and stuff, right? Like so much more VR of like every way, shape, and form, and we're getting new, devices all the time. Like how much crazier is it going to get until we really do unplug from real life and we're just in VR? So, I mean, anytime that I've gone to an old folks home, which hasn't been a lot lately, but I guess even like before, like my grandmother was about 101 actually when she passed away, and she was living in an old folks home for like the last 5-6 years of her life or something like that. And I was thinking, man, this looks really boring. What's it going to be like by the time I'm old and I need to be in one of these places? And I was like, hopefully we're all just plugged into some sort of VR and living a way cooler life.
Yeah.
Wind it down that way, I mean, it seems like we're certainly headed in that direction.
Well, they better tighten that shit up, because I already get motion sickness from VR. So I can't imagine when I'm 70, 80, they're going to need to make it a little bit easier on us.
So they did. I know so I've only really played the PlayStation one. And so when they had the second Spider-Man game or whatever that they did with it, I was really worried about it because like a few things really messed me up. Like I can't play, if I play Skyrim, I can't like walk. I have to do the jump or else I'll be done in like 5 minutes. But they did something because I was like, man, I really want to try the Spider-Man one. This would be cool. And they've actually made it so that there's something that kind of slows it down, and the motion sickness feeling doesn't happen like the
Oh,
same as it usually would. Because I figured, oh, the minute I go to swing, I'm done. I'll probably be puking and like
yeah,
tear the
just
helmet off. Because like even when I try to play like Star Wars, like in the ships and stuff, I'll be chasing somebody, and like after a minute of spinning myself around in a circle, I'm like, cool, I'm about to puke. I always have to
yeah.
remind myself not to do that. But yeah, they've done something to kind of change it so that it stops triggering that reaction out of you.
Good.
Yeah.
That was the big problem. You have the Sony, you have the Sony the 2, right? You have the VR2.
I have the VR1. I
Oh
have the
my
original
god,
PlayStation
really?
1. Yeah, I don't even have a PS5 yet. Why would I
What?
buy it? There's
I don't
nothing on
either.
it that I want to play yet that's not. I mean, I've
The-
gone back lately
it's gonna
because
save
like
you, but dude, the load times on the PS4 compared to the PS5, you'll feel like you're in an old folks' home waiting to die. Like
yeah,
you get it for the
like
load times alone is worth it.
I know, but there's nothing that I play right now that's really, I don't know, cross between or whatever. Like maybe by the time Grand Theft Auto 6 comes out is when I might actually buy a PlayStation 5.
Fair enough.
That'd be about it. Because even now, like I've got so much on my PlayStation that I don't play. Like I'd started playing.
Right.
I was always a fan of the God of War, and so
Mhm.
I'd started playing. You
Same.
know the new one, or the not the newest one, but the first one with his kid.
Mm-hmm.
I'm probably like halfway through, and I got sidetracked to something else, and I haven't gotten back to it. And then I started playing because I have Diablo 2 on my Switch, and so I've been actually going back and playing that lately. But so every time I finally hit a spot where it gets too hard and I die, and I have to make it back to get all my stuff back, I'm like, "Oh, this is gonna be a while." So I just hit one of those yesterday.
So I get Diablo 4 is out of the question. We're still on 2, right?
Yeah,
Like we're
I'm still on 2,
okay.
man. Yeah. I mean, because one of my buddies showed it to me, and he was like, "Hey, it's really cool, you should play it." And I'm like, and I'm, like, weird like that now, like, I have to go back and play all the other ones before I can
Mhm.
get to wherever we're at now.
Mm.
That's just how I do it, I guess. I don't
Hey,
know. I like knowing the origins of all things.
yeah, I think for me that sort of authenticity is,
Yeah.
important because it puts you in that time that everybody else was in.
Right.
Like I didn't play a Souls game until like a couple of years ago. But when I did, I made sure to play the original PS3 Demon Souls with the terrible frame rate and the
Right.
poor graphic. Like I wanted to experience it the way it was supposed to be in 2009.
Yeah.
I don't need to play a cleaned up version because that's not the authentic thing, right?
Right.
So
Yeah. I like the
yeah.
evolution, see how it all works out. Like, when I went through Mass Effect, originally, it was like, when they only had 2, I guess they had the first 3 out, but they were all, like, remastered and stuff.
Mm,
And even watching, like, going from 1 to 2 to 3, just the advancement of it all was awesome. Like, you appreciate it so much more, I feel like, when you go through it that way instead of just jumping in at whatever the final point is to play the nice cleaned up version of everything.
I think so. Media M5 says, I'm watching the new Castlevania like anime or whatever it's named. Season 1 was a blast. You guys checked out Castlevania? It seems like right up both your alleys.
I
I heard
did season 1. It was pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I heard it was good, but I still haven't. I mean,
One of
there's so
those
much stuff.
Netflix originals. I kind of slept on a lot of the Netflix originals for a while, but some of them are actually pretty decent.
Yeah, I would check that. I've been pleased with it. There's like a newer one. I forget what it's called, like Nocturne or something like that. I haven't gotten through that one. That was kind of where I was at, a couple episodes into that, but not for any other reason than, like Vic is saying, you just get sidetracked by something, and then all of a sudden you just don't go back to it. Not because you didn't like it, just because you just
Other
don't go
stuff.
back to it.
Yeah.
So
Only got so many hours in my day, unfortunately.
Yeah.
that's right.
That's the
Yeah.
problem. And I've got one buddy that's always recommending stuff to me that he likes, and then I find stuff, that I eventually want to get into. Like I'm kind of the worst because I'll collect a bunch of stuff that like I'm gonna get into
Mhm.
this,
Mhm.
just not today.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
COVID was
stuff
one of my
stuff never stops coming out. So
right. I
the
mean,
pile keeps getting bigger, right?
yeah, I almost need COVID to hit again just so I can get back through a
Wow.
bunch of stuff.
You need to you need to get in an old folks home so you can finally just watch all this stuff,
I
right?
mean,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, my life has definitely gotten a lot busier just life-wise. So, I mean, an old folks home would be great
Right.
because I could sit there and not have to do anything. But I mean, nowadays I'm much busier than I like to be. I got to keep fighting
Yeah.
with myself about it. I'm like, I really want to sit down, but there's 30 other things that I got to do. So
Yeah, relaxing is the best. So yeah, so well, speaking of time and life and everything, so Kharn, you've decided some things lately. You've decided that you're going to do some stuff, and
Yeah.
you kind of want to tell us all about that.
Sure. I mean, I've been in Kansas City for about 2 years now, working with if people watching didn't know, Ronin Stunt Company, doing film stuff and everything. And I have some projects coming up, but it's that situation where they're not super confirmed, so I can't really talk about those. However, like we were talking about earlier, my transition from wrestling to acting, when basically WWE was like, "Hey, we'll give you a call," and I'm like, "Oh, let's try this other thing out for a while." I went to go do mostly acting for the sake of getting better at professional wrestling, and then went to undergrad, and that took quite a few years, and then just went to grad school, and that took a good many years. And it's been probably since 2014 that I've had like a real match. Like I was saying earlier, the last one was pretty much with Bob Holly. And I mean, I've been thinking about this actually for a couple of years now since graduating from grad school in Mississippi. And I think I would really regret it if I didn't try wrestling again, given what I know now, given that I went to learn more acting stuff and more storytelling, specifically for that reason. So I wanted to not just make like a Facebook post or something about, hey, I'm coming back to wrestling, but do so on, a good friend show. Um, I feel like that's a little more appropriate coming on a wrestling show to announce you're coming back to wrestling at some point. Like I don't know when, I don't know where. I could go to New York, California, maybe Tampa. Could even end up back in Louisville, Kentucky. I don't know these details yet. But the point is, within this week or next week, at some point, I will be restarting training here at a place called XWC, Extreme Wrestling Center, here in Kansas City. They've been very gracious and allowed me to come in and just join some of their classes, which I haven't gotten to do yet because I just confirmed this. So, but I will be retraining up to a point with the expectation of returning to professional wrestling to some degree. And that was the announcement I wanted to kind of make when I came on this show here today.
Oh, all right. Well, I don't know how to break this to you, but Vic, I think you'll agree with me that you went to school for all this acting and whatnot, and wrestling's kind of about moves now. How's your tope, kid?
Yeah.
Well,
did
that's
you learn to get
the-
your shit in yet?
Yeah.
That's what it's about now, man.
Yeah, you can monologue, but like, can you do like a 450?
Look,
I mean, that's so the difference between TV wrestling and
I think I'm a good enough actor now that I can, talk for 2 minutes and I don't need to fucking do any of that shit. But don't mean
you got to be able to do both nowadays.
Right, man, I remember when I went to OVW, I'm like, I want to do 450s. I want to learn how to do this and this. Like, we don't do that. Like,
Yeah.
you're not going to learn that here. I'm like,
Yeah.
But that's because
All right,
Rip
well,
was
that was
coaching.
then.
Yeah. I mean,
Well-
I've told my students the same shit because I get asked like, well, what do you do to get over? I go, you get your shit in. I said,
Look,
you gotta
I
you know.
guarantee you every move that I did before, from any time in wrestling, I can still do. So if I need to pull that stuff out of my bag of tricks, absolutely 100% have no doubt I can.
As long as they can call it to you 4 times in a row, you can hit it.
Hell, at this point, I might, after a few weeks of training, I might be the one calling stuff again. I don't know.
Extra
but I
grizzled.
mean, I don't I don't know about Buff Bagwell wrestling anymore, but I can still do the blockbuster, so I got that at least.
Yeah.
I can guarantee Buff can't do it anymore. he's not.
Probably not.
I saw him
I'm in
a
the
year
clear.
or two ago, and he was having a rough go. As nice
Yeah,
of
I
a
did.
fellow
I
as
saw him
Buff is, he's not in good shape.
a good while back, but I mean yeah. Unfortunately, a lot of guys are getting to that point now that we watched when we were kids.
Right. Well, we're not that young anymore, which I keep noticing more and more all the time when I go to train students because like
Yeah.
I try to do the least amount in the ring as possible. But
Right.
I mean, even just me giving a guy a headlock takeover, showing a guy how to do it. If I don't have 2 sets of knee pads on, my knees hurt for about a week afterwards. It's a lot of fun. And I know, like, even Suzio, he just recently got a year older, and I was like, yeah, everything's gonna catch up a lot more now. There's something about it. That extra tick on your trip around the sun, you start feeling it a lot more. I
Well,
mean,
that's the other thing. I figured, like, now if I'm gonna do this, this is the time to do it because I wait a few, 3 to 5 more years, and restarting is just not gonna be in the cards.
yeah, and your
I mean,
body
it's a
just
possibility.
doesn't kinda snap back into it as much as it
Yeah.
used to. Like, for me now, I can when I get in to train with students and stuff, like, I can go for a little bit, but I have to push myself to do it, and I can actually feel my body kind of fighting against me and the things that I already think I should be able to do, and they just don't happen as easy as they used to.
I mean, I'm lucky in a sense that stunt training and even theatrical combat that I've done regularly has kind of kept some of that muscle memory. Because
Right.
I learned there's a lot of similarities and crossover. There's subtle differences, but like impact stuff and just overall like the wear on the body is quite the same.
Yeah.
So I'm still a little conditioned in that, but it's definitely gonna still be it's always a shock to your system when you take a first bump after 10 years or for
Oh,
the
yeah.
first time.
Mhm.
I mean, I let a kid, give me a snapmare a couple weeks ago, and I was like, "Oh, this will be fine." And I took the bump, and I went, "That hurt a lot more than it should have." I laid
Wrestling
there for a
is real
second.
after all. We were
Yeah, the
making
kid.
fun of him earlier, but it
Yeah.
turns out he was right. Wrestling is
Oh,
totally
yeah.
real.
I mean, the kid looked at me. He goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "No." He was like, "Is it something I did?" I'm like, "Nope." I'm like, "You did everything just fine. It just hurts a lot more than I wanted it to. That's all."
That's right. You just say, all right, you just do the motion of the snapmare and I'll just gently have a seat. How about that?
Yeah. Yeah.
His muscle memory is the important thing here, not yours.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
you know how to take a snapmare. This is not an issue.
Yeah.
You get
Joke.
this move down. That's what you need to practice, kid. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. But yeah, it's true. I mean, God, taking a bump, I can't even imagine that. Like all the muscle memory is still there. Like I would definitely feel like I could just lock up with both of you guys right now. But taking a bump, no, thank you.
Yeah.
And even you were talking about Buff Bagwell. It's like, remember Buff got like paralyzed on live TV, right?
Right. Yep.
If you really go back and look at Buff Bagwell, like back in 97, 98, he didn't do anything. I remember actively watching him like, what does Buff Bagwell even do? He just is in the ring moving sort of, but like nothing ever happens. He just stuff
Right.
happens around him and he doesn't move like hardly. He does. I don't know what he does. So even that guy can get hurt, and it's like it just happens. If it's gonna happen, it's gonna happen.
Yeah. True.
So but yeah, so well, good luck with that, Kharn, with the letting people beat you up on purpose thing. That's hopefully that works out. Do practice your suicide dive. That's all that anybody wants to see now. Everybody knows that. That's just part of your shine spot. Most of the time, you won't even bother with the headlock. You'll go straight into suicide dive, save time. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you out there. As far as what you're talking about, Vik, you got Death Proof Dojo, everything. What are you up to these days that you have to keep getting up out of the house and leaving and doing stuff? Like whatever you want to tell us that you got going on.
I mean, I work backstage for NWA as well, which has been fun. I mean, that doesn't keep me super busy. Obviously, they only run like every, I don't know what month, every 6 weeks or so they do their tapings. So I've been working backstage there, which I super enjoy. I didn't think I was gonna like, I don't know, getting back into anything, I suppose. And then, like just over a year ago now, they were in Tampa, and Sylvia had a bunch of our students there, and so I pretty much all went to see some old friends and to make sure that the students didn't do anything stupid, or around some of the vets and whatnot. And it turned out I just had a great time hanging out there. And meeting everybody backstage, and I was like, "This is weird. People are cool." Like, not that people aren't cool everywhere, but it was just like an all-around very good locker room, and especially for being, I don't know, like kind of TV wrestling, I guess, or having like a little bit more history behind it. I didn't know really what to expect, and like I kind of started paying attention to the product as well while I was there, and I was like, I do kind of enjoy this. So I sniffed around and talking to Doc, he had like Dr. Tom, he had kind of asked me, he's like, "You still want to bump?" And I was like, He's like, "You want to produce?" I'm like, "I could maybe do producing or whatever,
Yeah.
see what happens." And, kind of a couple, well, maybe about a month or 2 later, they contacted me and talked to me about some stuff, and so I've been doing that now for, I think, almost a year? I don't know. It's hard for me to recollect because it's always so spaced out, unfortunately. Like, I wish there was more stuff that they were doing on a regular basis, but, I mean, what it is fun. I super enjoy the product. I mean, I'm not big on a lot of what's on TV wrestling, and that might just be because it doesn't fit my view of wrestling. So, but I
Mhm.
just don't watch because I don't wanna sit there and say, like, "This is the shits," because I think it's the shits,
Mhm.
I've had too many older veterans who are locked into just their viewpoints on things, and I don't wanna
Mhm.
be that guy. Because obviously whatever, the 2 main companies are doing is awesome, um, because 'cause they're all making tons of money and they're on TV and people are living their dreams doing that, so however it happens, good for them. Keep it going. I mean, I'm not gonna say anything about it. I just find for me, I usually don't have 2 hours to sit and watch wrestling, let alone 3 hours.
Sure.
So, like, NWA is just an easier, more digestible for me to watch, and I mean, even most of the stuff I find that, like, does maybe irk me or piss me off, I can usually, like, kind of find it forgivable because it's from somebody who's younger and still learning or,
Mhm.
whatever else. It's kinda easier for me to let go. It's usually not something dangerous that I see.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've seen a lot of talents there who are, like, improving weekly,
Oh,
monthly,
yeah.
that type of thing, and guys coming into their own in, like, good ways and stuff like that, and so for me, it's kind of a perfect fit for me, and I mean, I got to see the Outrunners a few times, which is
Mhm.
awesome
Mhm.
because, like, I was super happy, knowing they've recently been signed because they were after it for so long and working real hard and getting their stuff in, and,
Mhm.
it
The
is funny
spin.
be
They got the
Yeah,
spin in.
yeah,
Yeah.
it is funny because like, I've had to work with Austin Idol a little bit, who is the quintessential of an older wrestler who says, "I don't like this because of this,"
Mhm.
and they're the exact thing, like, I know they did something. I think the last time I produced something with them, they were with Austin and Zion in a 8-man tag match, for the pay-per-view, and you can kinda watch. I've seen it on camera, but they're just doing their thing while Austin's going off doing his thing, and, like, the interaction to me was priceless to see, like, kinda knowing them all, and because Austin was just getting pissed off by them, but he's already, like, cutting a promo where he was pissed off to begin with, so it kinda, like, added to it more and more 'cause, one of them would just be like, "Hey, talk about us," and, like, he's not gonna say anything about them. Like, he's already got his agenda to discuss, and so, like, he'll be in the middle of cutting his thing, and he'll stop for a second, and one of them will be like, "Talk about the Outrunners." He'll be like, "Shut up!" You know? Just yells at them to shut up, and I'm like, "This is gold."
Yeah.
And, I was telling him afterwards, I was like, "That was so good." I'm like, "The match was really good, the segment was really good." They're like, I don't know about those kids. They're too bouncy, spin around too much, all this sort of shit." And I was like, "That's what works." I mean,
Right.
I
Yeah.
said to him, "Both of those kids worked for a decade, and just working didn't work for them. So
Yeah.
what they're doing now is working." So, like, that's
Yes.
pro wrestling to me.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
gotta be you gotta look at what everybody else is doing and then see
yeah,
what you can not do. Um, that's basically how it is. And
yeah,
NWA is good because they have like, you're talking about the up and coming guys and guys that you're working with and
yeah,
producing, but they've got guys, well, you just Austin Idol,
right,
they've got guys that have been there. There's guys like at every sort of like stop along the journey
yeah,
are kind of under one roof in NWA. So,
yeah,
you know, combine that with the classic, throwback look, the
right,
studio wrestling.
yeah,
It gives like the kids a real good sort of like it's like going in a time machine. Like it's almost
yeah,
like they get to feel like It's not exactly like it was in the territories, but as close as you're going to get. And it's a
Yeah.
valuable education nonetheless, because you got guys like Austin Idol that were in the territories. So,
I mean, there's so many guys there that like the amount of knowledge is like pretty amazing from top to bottom, like and just the different. I mean, wrestling always has different flavors of ice cream. You know what I mean? And but NWA has so many different flavors, and it all kind of like works together very interestingly. Because I mean, some of the
Mhm.
stuff that I mean, a good way to put it is like the boss, William Corgan he doesn't always know wrestling terminology. So like whatever his idea is, sometimes he will say, "But make it wrestling." He's like, "This is my idea.
Okay.
I'm giving this to you guys to work with. Make it wrestling."
Mhm.
And so like then you kind of get like this conglomeration of the wrestling brains like that all put it together to then kind of transfer that into the talent and what the talent brings out. And most of the time, it all works out. I mean, yeah, there hasn't been too many times I've seen something that turns into a clusterfuck, but it's usually not due to communication, I would
Yeah.
say. But it's pretty awesome because, like, sometimes you get something that's tricky, and you're like, "How the fuck do you make this work?" And I mean, Austin Idol, he's pretty unique at like the simplicity of what it is, of how like he'll take something that seems really complicated and he'll simplify it, and it works very easily, and then it turns out really good, and you will get the exact desired effect, you know. And even on the other end of the spectrum, you get a guy like Homicide, same thing, you know, and such a different style,
Mhm.
but yet still with that knowledge of things, finding a way to make it all fit and make it all work together, and it just makes it a lot more fun. I mean, I've enjoyed this part of wrestling more than I've enjoyed working in a long time. So
Well, that's good. Because, for one reason or another, some places make people that used to love wrestling hate wrestling.
yeah,
And
well,
to a certain degree, even with fans, there's generations of fans that just think that's all wrestling ever was. And
right,
it's not true. It was
yeah,
just that kind of presentation, but they're not the end all and be all. So there are still things to enjoy. There are still things to, that are like back when we got into it, like when we saw that stuff growing up that we liked. There's a way to kind of reach back and get some of that stuff and harness some of that stuff.
yeah. Well,
Um,
NWA is cool for that because when they do that TV
mhm,
production, it's very much the old school like TV thing. Like the first time I walked into their TV taping, I was like, "Holy shit! Like this looks exactly how old school NWA looked." And then I've been to
mhm,
the pay-per-views, and I'm like, "This is exactly how new wrestling looks." So I'm
mhm,
like, "This is a great blend of that." You know what I mean? The actual history, still having some of the new and blending it all together. To me, it's much more fun. It's a product that I enjoy watching. I know maybe not for everybody, but I mean, if you're a wrestling purist at all and have that appreciation for it, and you're not just stuck on, only big TV production, it's a great
mhm.
place to watch wrestling.
Yep. And now they got the CW deal, so
The
like
CW app, yeah,
yeah,
can
you can
watch
get on the
NWA
app,
on the
or
app that
the
you can get for free, or go to
website, right? You can do the website too, right?
CWTV.com. Yes, I've had to tweet and
Yep,
Instagram
that's
that
what's
one a
up.
bunch.
Modern.
Yeah,
It feels like it should be on a tube television, but you can watch it on your phone or
right.
your super curved OLED 4K monitor.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's good. Well, I could sit and talk to you guys all day, but think we should let you go and do those things in the future. But if we're going to follow along with you, we're going to want to know where we can do that. So, Kharn, tell the people where they can follow along with you on your journey.
Most of my stuff is going to be put through my Instagram, and that
Okay.
is at the Kharn Alexander. That is
Mm-hmm.
my address. So definitely give me a follow, and I will make sure you get all the updates on anything I'm doing.
All right. Anything else that you want to put over before you go?
No, just that some of those projects I wasn't really allowed to publicly talk
Mm,
about right now. I will be updating those soon as I get information. So definitely that's where it's going to be. It's all going to be on that Instagram. So hopefully I can get some info on the wrestling side of things as well as the film side of things here to everyone soon.
Nice. Yeah, I'll definitely be watching. And Vic, you talked about NWA, you talked about the CW app. Anything else that you want to get over? I know you've that lovely, beautiful voice has done some.
You can always hire
some
me
work.
to do your YouTube videos or whatever you need voiceovers for through Fiverr. That's where I make all my big bucks on voiceover nowadays.
That's right.
About as cheap as it comes, but I mean, it brings me some interesting stuff. I like doing it.
So a great value is what you're saying. Like,
It's a very great value.
you
because
say
if you're a
cheap,
fan
I
of
hear
mine-
value is what.
Yes.
Is what.
I mean, you can't beat it. You got the Z-list celebrity like myself with this beautiful voice. I will say, it's not motivational. People quit asking me to do motivational videos and telling me that I'm not motivational. I already know this.
I would
Is
say
my
you're
voice.
a CW list celebrity, but that's just me.
I mean,
Gotta
maybe.
hit that
Yeah, I don't
first
know about
anime
that.
gig.
Yeah, exactly, right? Then I have to know what I always see the ad because I get these targeted ads where there's the one guy who's like, you have to know how to blink in anime for voiceover. And it makes me laugh every time because I'm like, I get it immediately. It's not just like blink, blink. It's, like that's a blink in anime.
Yeah, that's right.
What was that? Somebody said, I want to hear
Yeah.
Vic say what?
How you doing? You don't have to put over that guy.
I do. It's about, that's the
All right,
most
there
I'll
it
get
is.
from there.
He clipped it. He clipped it. He'll jerk off to it later. All right.
Yeah.
So yeah, and social media handles for everybody that
Yeah,
wants to
mine's
follow
at
you.
Vik the Space Lord. There's definitely some underscores in there, but it's only
Mhm.
on Instagram and Twitter. My screaming face in both of them. So
Very nice.
I don't think I have any fake accounts. Actually, I was never that cool.
Nah, well,
Me neither.
those are for the A-list celebrities. So
Right.
you
Yeah.
guys are on your way there, but just not yet. You're not over until someone's trying to pretend they're you online.
Right. Exactly.
So-
Yeah.
So I think all three of us are safe. So with that being said, thank you guys for spending time today, making up for Tony Khan's lack of content.
Somebody's gotta
I
do
mean,
it.
he could have put the Outrunners on TV this week. They would have
Yeah.
taken up
Hey,
the time.
did you know that just this past Thursday on Ring of Honor, the Outrunners won a match?
I think I saw that. Yeah, I keep seeing
Nice.
they're claiming something is AI that happened in that. I don't know. I saw it again today, and I was like, "Oh, it looks like they won. That's all that matters."
The win was real. The win was
Yeah.
real. So that's
Okay.
all that matters. So all right. So yes, once again, thanks to Kharn Alexander, Vik the Space Lord, and so for those guys, I'm the vet, and I don't have a sign-off line. Jimmy, take us out.